The story begins with a girl falling on the floor and starting to get hysterical so that she would be allowed to leave. Father Seal Crawd and Siberi's younger brother were so taken aback by this behavior that they just stared at her with their mouths open. Mother Lyra grabbed her head and exclaimed that this was happening to her today. The girl screamed that if she didn't do this, they wouldn't give her their permission. If her relatives are against this marriage, then let them just step on her. The woman decided to listen to her daughter, so she put her foot on her face. Ramil immediately jumped up and was indignant about what she was doing. Mom poked her foot in her face again because the girl said that she needed to step on it. Our heroine exclaimed, "And if she tells them to stab her, will they do it too, or what?" The woman grabbed the sword and whispered that there was nothing she could not do. The girl immediately said that she had made a mistake. Then she asked to sit down with the others and stated that she was saying all this quite seriously. Father said that until yesterday she had no interest in marriage or dating. He was curious why she suddenly made such a fuss about the wedding. Ramil replied that she had now discovered this topic for herself, but before that she had thought about it for a long time. Mom sighed heavily and said that yes, but why exactly Viscount Roel? When our heroine woke up in the morning, she realized that she had entered the body of another person. This guy was her favorite character in the work Wounded Sword, who made many hearts cry. God gave her a chance to meet him in person. The novel is narrated from the point of view of the male protagonist, Roel Arnon. The thing is, this book is a complete tragedy. From the very beginning, the boy's heart explodes, and he loses the ability to use both legs. He also lost his aura and became unable to wield a sword, so he stopped being a knight. After this, the young man lost his family, his home in general, everything he had. Only pitch darkness appeared before his eyes. That was his end. The story ends with him dying tragically, but our heroine didn't want to remember that scene at all. If she doesn't want this ending, then something needs to be done. Knowing the character of the hero, if a stranger offers help, then he will definitely refuse. Therefore, to begin with, it is necessary to become a confidant of the knight. Perhaps become a friend to a young man, although even friends have limits of support. If you become a lover, then if they break up, then everything will be over. In that case, there is only one way out, to become his wife, so she can turn Roel's bloody road into a flowery path. Mother added that she knew the Viscount's situation, and despite this, she still wanted to marry him. In the work, the young man lost a lot, but over time, the core located in the heart was restored and he began to move. Therefore, she answered yes, because she was sure that he would be able to get back on his feet again, and she would be there to help him do it. When there was a pause, our heroine thought to herself that maybe even this wouldn't work, but she couldn't give up for the sake of her favorite. After which she began to say that no matter how they resisted, she would still get her way, but her mother interrupted her and told her to take care of him. Why should Lyra be against her marriage? Let her do everything for him then. But suddenly the younger brother shouted that he was against it. Did they really think that all this made sense? The girl was surprised that he was really worried about his sister. He should have been beaten less as a child. But the guy added what kind of crime the Viscount had committed in his past life, that they were putting this crazy woman in his place as his wife. Ramil began to show him the middle fingers and think about what he could possibly know about past lives, what he was talking about them. Mother muttered that, if you think about it, she had never met the young man before and suddenly he would refuse. Our heroine replied that she also didn't think that she would succeed the first time. But if he continues to convey the sincerity of his feelings, then one day they will reach his heart. Father asked if the wedding negotiations took place, would she move into the Roel house? The girl replied that no, if she could persuade him, she would like to bring him to their estate. I thought to myself that for a guy who was devastated living in the capital, there was no better place to take care of his body and soul than here. Meanwhile, in the Arnon mansion, the young man told the servants that there was still time according to the contract, but he called them to say thank you in advance. It may be uncomfortable, but nevertheless, he thinks it would be better to say it face to face. The man objected in a sense of discomfort because Roel knows how much they respect him. The guy thanked him for the kind words, but thought to himself how one could respect such an incompetent employer as he. Jack's hard work. He enjoyed going to the office. Every time the guy sees the garden that Chris took care of, he experiences wonderful feelings. Thanks to the food Uni prepared, he looked forward to mealtime. The servants were very touched by these words, so each of them had tears flowing, but it was already time to leave. The young man looked out the window and thought to himself that he would very much like to pat him on the shoulder if it were possible. Now it was possible to take a break because no one else would come to the young man anyway. But the guy was wrong. Our heroine had already arrived at his estate. The maid told her that if she waited, she would bring the Viscount. The girl looked around and thought to herself whether this place should be called simple, how complicated its situation was, why there were no decorations. After a short period of time, a young man appeared who said that he had been told that she had been looking for him. The girl was torn inside. Could it really be him? It was crazy. But she introduced herself out loud and said that it would be a great honor for her to meet him. The knight replied that it was the same for him and asked what brought her there since it seemed they had not met before. The girl replied that perhaps it was unexpected, but she had something to offer the gentleman. Then she approached the young man, got down on one knee, and proposed marriage. When there was a deathly silence, Ramil thought that it seemed that an atmosphere had emerged that would be followed by a refusal, so she decided to go with Plan B and demonstrate her sword skills, saying that she has a family of knights, and so is she. That is why the girl admires Mr. Rowell, a fellow knight. She thought to herself that, while at the same time appealing to the fact that she belonged to a knightly family, the plan was to admit that she had been watching him as if he were a knight. The young man replied that he could not be called a knight now, since he could no longer hold a sword. Our heroine began to panic and said that she didn't mean it that way, but she thought to herself that she should have just said that she fell in love with him at first sight. Arnon added that he doesn't know her very well. Regardless of the reason for the proposal, the current situation is too sudden. Our heroine asked for forgiveness and said that she had not thought about him, but the guy objected that he was sorry because she had proposed to him with such kindness. Ramil replied that she understood him completely, but she thought to herself that she had not hoped to achieve success on the first try. First, she would have to go back and replan everything. At home, the servants said that they did not think that the mistress would return so immediately. The girl replied that she would have to continue visiting him in the future. She couldn't ruin everything. The maid said that she thought that she would kidnap him as soon as he refused, but the miss turned out to be more reasonable. Our heroine was indignant. Did she really look like a person who was ready to commit something like kidnapping people? The subordinate calmly replied that yes, since she could stand on a horse upside down. Crod began to slowly draw her sword and say that for her, murder comes before kidnapping. The servants immediately ran away, each in his own direction, saying that it was time to prepare dinner. When they left, the girl thought that perhaps she should have complimented him, looked him ingratiatingly in the eyes, and proposed. Perhaps then the young man would have answered with consent, although that would have been too much. But as it was, he didn't even really look at her. After the servants returned, the girl said that there were limits to how much she could plan in her head, so she needed their help. The guys ignored her and continued to chat about something of their own. Then Ramil said that she would give 1 gold coin for her opinion. They were immediately interested and asked if she could tell them more about the agenda for the meeting. Our heroine exclaimed that she needed to do something to make Mr. Roll agree. One of the guys said he thought it would be a good idea to appeal to the young lady's strength. Another added that one could tempt him with a bag of gold coins. The girl refused these 2 proposals, since she cannot boast about her money or power, after which she asked if there was anything romantic. Carol coughed and said that she had an idea. Now she would tell her proposal. Meanwhile, the doctor checked the boy and said that everything was still fine. It was a low success rate study from the start. When asked if he had organized his lab well, the man replied that the cleaning was almost complete, but the suspicious guys he had mentioned earlier had appeared again. When he told them the study was over, they felt noticeably relieved. He doesn't think the goal is to steal data. Then he said that he heard that recently some lady visited the young man. The young man replied that yes, it was Ranila Crowd who proposed to him, but he refused. When asked why he didn't agree, the guy replied that the lady said that she admired him as a knight, but now he's just worthless and has a lot of debt. The man exclaimed that there was no need to say that because the gentleman was simply a wonderful person. Arnon added that he had already sold everything he had. The debts were so great that even if she married him, she would not be happy. Looking out the window, the interlocutor asked what he thought the girl would do now. Roll replied that she would probably go home. The man objected that, unlike the gentleman, the future bride did not seem to be going to give up so easily. Ramil Crowd arrived at the mansion again to talk to the Viscount. The girl said that she came to propose to him. The guy objected that, like last time, he said that they were seeing each other for the first time, but our heroine said that this time everything was official. But of course, the young man can refuse today. She is not forcing him to do so. The young man asked her for forgiveness and said that this time he would also simply refuse. Our heroine exclaimed that there was no need to apologize, everything was perfectly fine. However, it is a little sad, so if she can take a look at the mansion, she is very interested in the capital's architecture. The guy asked if the mansions in the capital were any different, but he just didn't really understand it. Ramil replied that yes, in particular, these ceiling angles are the charm and highlight of the capital's architecture. Roll replied that, okay, he was now appointing someone to be her tour guide, but the girl objected that she would like to see it herself. She can concentrate better when it's quiet around her. Crod is the type of person who likes to enjoy creativity and art alone. The young man replied in confusion that, okay, let it be as she wanted. After some time, our heroine went up to the second floor and thought about whether she would be able to meet that child. Then she remembered the instructions of the servant who said that, firstly, she should make friends with people close to him. Ramil then thought that, as far as she knew, he had no family, but suddenly remembered about his younger sister. So I sat down on the floor and thought that I would like to know where exactly it is and how to find it. It looks like I should go back and replan everything. But suddenly the little girl's voice was heard, asking for forgiveness and if everything was okay with her. Our heroine was very confused and muttered that she just had a slight headache. The little one replied that it didn't seem like it was a little. Since she managed to fall, she urgently needed to lie down and rest. Crowd thanked her for her concern and asked what the girl's name was. The little girl replied that it was Arnon. Lying on the baby's bed, Ramil thought to herself that her mission was almost a success since she was in her room. When asked what brought the girl here, our heroine answered that she came because she had business with Mr. Roll. Since she is also a knight, she came to greet Sir Arnon, or rather, she came to see him. The little girl muttered sadly that her brother was not picking up a sword now. When our heroine asked if she liked her little brother, the little girl exclaimed, "Of course! The young man is always very kind and understanding towards her. Even when the people who work here make mistakes, he smiles and doesn't get angry. An elder brother always tries to help anyone when he gets into a difficult situation. Also, if someone is going through bad times, the guy grieves with him." The girl smiled and said that what she said was the reason why she respected Mr. Roll. Since they have a lot in common, he suggests that they sit comfortably and continue the conversation. When Ramil asked what she was reading at the moment, the girl replied that etiquette standards. In fact, she often skims it because she doesn't know what it's about. Our heroine asked if the little one wanted her to come to her and teach her etiquette. The little girl was very happy and exclaimed that, of course, she would be happy. Crod thought to herself, to suddenly make an appointment for her next visit, just perfect. Thanks to this cute, pink, soft and sweet baby, she became a little closer to realizing the plan, a flower path for the hero Roel. Already at home, Carol asked what other standards of etiquette there were, and let him tell her first about tea-time manners, which are the simplest of the basics. Our heroine winked at her and confidently replied that she would not be late, to which the maid exclaimed that she should open the book immediately. 5 years ago, after a battle, an assistant reported that he had found a survivor. It seemed that she was the only one left in the village. Arnon said to take her to the survivor's camp, but the guy said there was no room there, so the order was given from above to just ignore her. The young man was indignant. What nonsense, let them immediately place this child in a camp. A voice from behind, a man with the title of a noble knight, asked if he thought they had time for chatting, if he was familiar with her at all. The young man bowed and said that his name was Roel. He was a centurion. The interlocutor was delighted that he didn't think he would meet a monster boy here who could cut out dozens a day as he was able to do today. When the young man replied that it was about 12, the man offered to pass on his achievement to him, and he in turn would take the child to the camp. The young man didn't like this at all. Is that how a noble knight should be? But he replied that okay, that's what they'll do. The man added that he was smarter than expected. Then the young man approached the little girl, took her hand and went towards the exit of the village. During dinner, the little one said that Lady Ramil came to her room. She was so beautiful. The girl also said that she really adores her brother and continued to talk about his strengths. And the girl also told her that her brother was very kind, and she agreed with her. The young man was embarrassed, and he started coughing. Hermia continued to babble that she had looked at the book of etiquette and read it, and the lady said that she could help her and teach her. The guy thought to himself that he had rejected a marriage proposal twice, so he should allow himself to help the girl. The little one noticed that the atmosphere had changed somehow, and added that if her brother was uncomfortable, she would not study. The young woman noted to herself that she was worried about him. Perhaps it was because she had been through the battlefield and lived in the camp, so she was very good at reading negative emotions. Since she was from a common family, she could not communicate with children from noble families. Because of his title of Viscount, the girl could not communicate with the children of commoners. Therefore, it turned out that she constantly spends time reading books alone. Lady Ramil can become a friend for her. Probably the baby hasn't had that for a long time. After which he replied that he was not against it. He was just surprised that she suggested it. The girl met a good man. Hermia joyfully exclaimed that it was true. She wanted to see her as soon as possible. The young man noted to himself that she would obviously be very disappointed if he did not allow her. By the time our heroine exclaimed that she had had a wonderful time, Carol, who was carrying the bags, said that since she had already had fun, it was time to study. The girl was indignant. In what sense? After all, she had been going to etiquette lessons all these 3 days. Did she really not feel sorry for her at all? The maid objected that she had only studied for 30 minutes. Crod stated that those 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. The woman again objected that she did not even have time to concentrate during that time. Ramil pressed her against the wall, looked into her eyes, ran her finger over her lips and said, "Be quiet. It doesn't matter at all." While the assistant began to feel sick after her actions, the girl said that at the moment the only thing that was important was her marriage. Carol said that since that was the case, maybe she should go back and start studying right away. Our heroine shouted no, and accidentally ran into some people in black cloaks. One of the young men asked if she was Ramil Crowd. The girl was surprised to herself that he knew her name, but who it was, he didn't look like an ordinary passerby. Then the guy added that while they were talking nicely, he should leave the capital immediately. Our heroine looked at him calmly and asked, "What if she doesn't want to?" The man replied that there was nothing to be done then. He would have no choice but to draw his sword. After a short period of time, the strangers were already begging for mercy and asking her forgiveness for disturbing them. Our heroine replied that if they didn't tell her everything now, they would get into trouble again. When she asked who sent them, the guys answered that they didn't know. Crod was indignant. "How could they take on the job? I don't know anything." The young man replied that it was for money, so they didn't really look into it. Our heroine said that in that case she would also place an order. But the guy objected that even if they were obsessed with money, they would never betray their clients. But suddenly, a huge diamond fell out of her pocket, and the girl said that she had many of them. The mercenaries immediately changed their rhetoric and said that they would become the most faithful servants for their mistress. Their names are Garin and Garin. After which they added that they would now go and fulfill her order, and Ramil asked her not to let her down. Carol said that she only made an offer when she arrived in the capital. What kind of threats are these? It's good that the lady has money and power. The lady suggested that someone else was interested in Roel. The maid said that it clearly looked like a threat from some girl. Our heroine thought that in the original work there seemed to be no women who were interested in the knight. Moreover, his younger sister said that they had not had guests in their house for a long time. It is urgently necessary to find out if the young man has a secret lover. The next day, Ramil said that she was just asking again, just in case, if he was ready to accept her proposal of marriage. The guy mumbled why it seemed to him that the bouquet was getting bigger and bigger, after which he asked for forgiveness and said that he would refuse today, too. The girl thought to herself that this was already the 3rd failure in a row, but nevertheless, Roel's reaction for some reason became softer than before, after which she threw out the bouquet and said that he had already rejected her 3 times. Could she ask him one question? After thinking for a moment, the young man smiled and replied that she could ask whatever interested her. Our heroine immediately became serious and asked if there were any other girls that the gentleman was communicating with. She thought that maybe he already had a loved one, which is why he refused her every time. The guy replied that he is not currently in a relationship and has never been in one. Ramil wondered if she could just steal it then, but then it dawned on her that if there were no ladies, then who was threatening her? While she was thinking, the young man asked whether she had decided to teach etiquette to his younger sister. The girl replied that everything was correct. She planned to give her hands often. Is everything okay? The knight replied that, of course, he was rather very grateful to her and asked if she had already eaten. Our heroine replied that she had come on an empty stomach, since she had other things to do before coming here, but she thought to herself that if he was nearby, then any meal with him would be the first for her. Arnon asked if she would like to have dinner with him and Heria. Crowd agreed. When they had already arrived at the dining room, our heroine thought to herself that this was a great chance to earn points. Then she turned to the little girl and said that she would now show her etiquette during meals. First, we needed to talk about how to sit. When you are going to sit down, you should do it on the right side of the chair, and when you leave, on the left. The brother and sister immediately asked, "Isn't it the other way around?" The girl got out of it and said that she had deliberately given the wrong answer to find out if the little one knew about it. Did they really think that the little sister didn't even know this? When our heroine tried to be smart, the little girl asked if this didn't apply to fish dishes. Ramil replied that she was testing her again. Heria is so smart. The young man asked if this should not be done with the left hand. The girl answered that it was true. Here she showed the opposite. They could not be deceived. After so many mistakes, the young man suddenly said that he thought that was enough. Crod thought to herself what to do now. She was probably caught for not knowing etiquette. Maybe she should tell him that she was just nervous, and that's why she made so many mistakes. But the knight added that she had hardly eaten because she was constantly teaching his sister, so let her start eating. After some time, the guy looked at the door and thought that there was a feeling as if she came every day. Could it be that she wouldn't come today? Then the young man realized what she was even thinking about. He needed to throw these thoughts away. When there was a knock at the door, he happily answered to come in. But it was not our heroine, but a man who said that they had not seen the Viscount for a long time. It was Fidel who was entrusted with delivering Mr. Roll's resignation letter to him. National defenders may receive salary upon retirement, whether or not someone told him about the time. The young man replied that he was hearing about this for the first time, but he thought to himself that he knew that they were aware of his situation, so why hadn't his superiors informed him about his salary? Noticing his dejected appearance, the young man said that, as expected, they were working half-heartedly. But let him not worry, since he works in the treasury, he will completely restore order in the treasury. Roel asked when he managed to become a worker in the treasury. What about his previous job then? The boy replied that after the gentleman left, the intensity of the work increased to such an extent that it became too much for them. As soon as something happened, they were sent there, but they were not the only knights in the empire. If they dismissed the commoner knights, they would be subject to a barrage of criticism, so there were even rumors that they were being sent there so that the guys would never return. So the guy had no choice but to change jobs in order to survive. Then he noticed the expression on his former commander's face and thought that he shouldn't have told him that. After which he decided to change the subject and say that there was good news too. In fact, he recently got married in his city. When Arnon said that he could guess that it was Key, the guest exclaimed in surprise, "How did he know?" The young man replied that they had always been together, so it would be even stranger not to know. Fidel objected that even though they were together, he only received beatings. The girl constantly threatened him that if he went to the gambling house again, she would cut off his hands. Roel replied that it was quite natural, since he was addicted to gambling. The old friend laughed nervously and asked if he had any good news at all. For some reason, the young man immediately had an image of Ramil in his head, but he answered out loud that there were none. The guy noticed that he thought for a second, so he started asking why he did it. I thought to myself that before he just laughed and continued the conversation, but now he was behaving suspiciously. Then he said that since he was here for work, he could not have private conversations, but next time he would definitely get an answer. After which he suggested getting down to business and studying all the documents. Fidel was shocked because he thought his financial situation would be fine, but it turned out that it was not. It is surprising that he endured it alone for so long. How can one remain in such a state? Is everything all right with him at all? It must have been difficult to carry all this alone. It is necessary to endow him with at least the slightest strength. Then he said that there was no need to worry. It seemed that the financial situation needed some sorting out, but everything would be fine if the guy started receiving a salary. When the young man added that the Viscount could rely on him, he replied that he would wait impatiently. A few days later, the knight received a letter in which Fidel asked for forgiveness and said that it was difficult to get a salary. Even when he asked his superior why, he simply repeated that the deputy minister refused. The strange thing is that even his boss does not understand the decision of the vice minister. He just repeats the same words in a circle, whether Roel had any problems with the deputy minister. The young man noted that this could not be. He did not know anyone in the Ministry of Finance, and his friend also wrote that it was necessary to find out if there were other reasons. He sincerely regretted that he had to report such results. The young man grabbed his head and thought to himself that he shouldn't apologize. Now those around him are worried about him. This is some kind of endless series of failures. There are no results in the treatment of the damaged core. All new hopes have disappeared. If he could use his aura again, his situation would be much better. What did the guy even expect from this action? Did she really think that the aura could return miraculously? Suddenly, our heroine appeared in the room, finding him with a sword in his hands and not understanding what he was planning. After they greeted each other, the guy asked if she had come here to propose to him again. The girl replied that yes. Did he really think that such an atmosphere could frighten her? When the young man again refused, the girl replied that it was nothing serious and asked if something had happened. The young man replied that nothing, but from that expression on his face one could assume a million stories, but continuing to ask about what he was hiding was impossible. So I decided to try to lighten the mood and said that the weather outside was just wonderful today. After which she suggested going for a walk with him and his younger sister since they needed to breathe fresh air. The knight asked for forgiveness and said that he had some things to do. Let the girl go for a walk with Heria. Our heroine thought to herself that something clearly happened to him. Sitting in the carriage, the little girl said that she would like her brother to come out too. He was fine until the morning. She then handed him a letter that was sent by his friend. He smiled as he checked the name to make sure it was the message he was waiting for. When the little one added that it seemed the name Fidel was written there, it dawned on our heroine that this was the knight's comrade. If this letter was really from him, then it turns out that this is the moment of receiving the salary. Why is the vice minister so reluctant to give him a salary? Even in the novel, there wasn't much information related to finances, but the guy did a lot for them. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the little one, who asked if she was afraid of something because her facial expression had just been very frightening. Ramil replied that she was thinking about what they should do today, whether there were any places the young lady would like to visit. The little girl replied that the place she would really like to visit was the theater. Then she realized that when she thought about it again, she decided that she didn't want to go there. After which, she noticed the sign in the window and said that she wanted to go to the park. Crod asked if this was true, but thought to herself that she seemed to be smart for her age, because she could see that the situation in her family was not very good. The little girl screamed that she wanted to go to the park and never wanted to see such a popular work as White Flowers in the Temple. The girl said that she was very disappointed because her sister loved theaters so much. But she really doesn't like to watch alone, and at first she was happy when the little girl mentioned him. Ramil thought that for the first time she had found a person who also liked the theater. The girl objected that the tickets there were very expensive. After thinking for a bit, the little girl suggested going there anyway. Our heroine did not break character and replied that she did not want to force her just because she liked it, but the little one said that, in fact, she also liked the theater. She also really wanted to go. Our heroine smiled and replied that then, in exchange for watching with her, she would allow her to choose the work. Meanwhile, the young man began to drown his problems in alcohol. After watching the play, our heroine asked if the little girl liked it. The little one replied that it was much more interesting than she imagined, especially the scene where the main character miraculously recovered from his illness. The girl thought to herself that it was a play where the main character overcomes an incurable disease. Perhaps the girl, seeing the main character, imagined her brother. Still, the ending was happy, so she hopes that it will remain a good memory for Heria. Suddenly the little one said that, if she thought about it, she had already been in this place with her brother. The little girl was in the capital for the first time, so they walked together and looked at everything. She tried many different new delicacies and saw many amazing things. And after that, they also went to see the play. The girl still cannot believe that her brother will no longer be able to walk. Our heroine said that Roel would definitely get back on his feet, and she thought to herself that she was sure of it, since this was the most important event in the novel. The little girl replied that she was worried about him because her brother always looked depressed. Everything was fine when he was doing research with Orm, but day by day his willpower became less and less. Ramil realized that she noticed that the knight was not in a very good position now. How could she console her? Hermia took her hand and said that she had one request. Could she come to their house often when she came to the capital? With the arrival of the lady, her brother's daily life, which was the same every day, seemed to change a little. The girl replied that, okay, she thought to herself that all this time she had been wondering if she was doing it in vain, but now she was convinced that she was not. Then the girl thought of how to cheer up the little girl and said that she also had a request for her. Our heroine took her to a store with chic dresses and told her to choose which one she wanted. Ramil remembered Carol's words, who said that she should give her clothes and such that it would be remembered for a long time. Every time the little one wears this outfit that she received as a gift, she will remember the young lady. And not only she, Mr. Roll will also think about her when he sees these clothes. Crod stated that she treats clothes like some kind of advertisement. The maid asked if she had better options, but the girl replied that she did not. I thought to myself that all this sounds somehow not very good, but I don't think that the method is bad. After some time, the girl appeared in different cute outfits, and our heroine screamed that she would pay for everything. Hermia objected that it was too much. How could she get something so expensive? She thought to herself that she saw the price tag when she was changing clothes. There were a bunch of zeros on it. Was she really going to buy this? Ramil said that she made a deal with her sister, and a promise must be kept. Couldn't the little girl pretend that nothing had happened, while she noted to herself that if anyone saw this scene, they would think that she was asking someone to buy her something? Then she continued that, being a lady, a girl should know how to keep her promises. When she added that she would buy 5 pieces, the girl cried out that 1 would be enough, but our heroine objected that 4 and no less. Then they started arguing about the number of outfits. The little one shouted that she didn't need much, and the girl that she wouldn't back down from her own. When they agreed on the number 3, our heroine immediately ran to the cellar to pay for everything. Hermia couldn't believe that she was actually buying her 3 sets of clothes, so she thanked her and said that she would wear them carefully. Ramil objected that these things were meant to be worn, so she should wear them more often. Then she handed her a note and said that this was her residential address, and if she wanted to contact her, she could send a letter. She thought to herself that the time would most likely come when the little one would need her help. When the girl returned home, she handed over her purchases to the maid and asked where her brother was now. The woman answered that he was in the office. On the way, the little girl thought that it was somehow strange, because usually the guy comes out to meet her, or to be called to him immediately, since his legs would not move. But you can't think about the bad, because Ramil said that he would definitely get better. As his little sister, she had to believe in the best. So she went into his office and told him that she was already back. Seeing him, the girl felt relieved, because he was the same as usual. The young man asked why she was looking at him so strangely. Maybe there was something wrong with his face. Hermia noticed that he was a little disheveled, just like when he drank after he found out that his legs had given out. When she muttered that his face was red, the guy replied that it must be because it was hot in the room. The young man sees this outfit on her for the first time. It looks so beautiful on her. The little girl thought to herself that as soon as he found out how they spent the day together, he would be very happy. After which everything began to be told in detail. Roll noted that apparently they had a lot of fun. The girl replied that yes, and next time they would definitely go together. It doesn't matter when. Let him just promise that one day it will happen. The young man replied that, good. Then she turned away and wished her brother good night. When the little girl left, the young man thought to himself that he was glad that she had fun. When he was turning in his wheelchair, he accidentally caught a bottle of alcohol that was standing next to him with his wheel, and when he tried to reach it, he couldn't reach it, and he thought to himself that he was truly worthless. The next day, the maid tried to wake up our heroine, who asked to give her at least 5 more minutes. Carol replied that in that case she would simply send Garen back. Hearing this, the girl immediately jumped up. But then she came to her senses and asked who it was. The woman asked why she decided to jump up if she didn't know. Carol explained that this was one of those thugs she trusted with one case last time. Since she is already up, it will take some time to get ready to go out. Our heroine exclaimed that there was no need to worry. There was one way. Literally, a moment later, she was already standing on the street, completely ready. The maid, dumbfounded, asked how she did it, but our heroine replied that it was better for her not to know. Upon seeing the girls, the guy began waving affably. Ramil wondered if this was the man who wanted to scare her. The maid suggested that perhaps he had lost his memory due to shock. Sitting down at the table, our heroine asked if they had done what she asked. Hearing the answer no, the girl rushed at him and began to beat him, and the maid tried to pull her away and said that people were actually watching. The young man began to justify himself by saying that he had tried very hard and had done everything possible. However, half of his face was not visible, so nothing could be found. But instead, the mercenary found out something else, and will now tell you. A little earlier, one of the guys was worried that they would be killed because they failed to complete the task. The second said that, most likely, they did not expect much from them. When the customer showed up and asked how things were going, Garen apologized and said that they had failed. The man ordered them to first sit down and explain what went wrong. The boys started telling her that her skills were much better than the information they were given. Even the two of them weren't enough. At first they threatened her, but as soon as they took out the sword, the girl immediately changed. She had incredible reaction speed and her dodging technique was perfect. They could do absolutely nothing with her, so the girl beat them up. If they had fought to the end, they would have definitely died. The customer muttered that this was strange because he had heard that she was very lazy and skipped training. The guys objected that this was some kind of nonsense. It was immediately obvious that she was an incredibly talented fighter. The stranger was about to leave and finally said that they should pretend that nothing had happened and that they should also know what would happen if the details leaked out. When he left, Garen covered his nose with his hand and was indignant that the man didn't wash himself. Why did he constantly smell like rotten meat? His friend told him to stop and start keeping an eye on him. After some time, they saw their customer meet with another masked man. After which, the young people headed somewhere further, and the guys continued to follow them. As a result, they hid behind some door and had no choice but to use the eavesdropping artifact. Their customer was heard to report that they had failed to drive away the Cloud Lady. But if he is given another chance, he will show what he is capable of. But the interlocutor objected that it would be better to leave this idea for now. Garan noted that it seems like the Black Hood is of lower rank. I wonder who the man in the red cloak is. The man stated that the important person at the moment is a finance ministry employee named Fidel. Suddenly, the young people stopped talking and stared at the wall behind which the boys were hiding. The young man began to panic. Why did they fall silent? Did they really notice that they were being eavesdropped on? Therefore, he immediately told his partner that they needed to run, since it seemed they had been found out. When he abruptly opened the doors outward, he saw no one, but he could not be mistaken, since he definitely heard someone touch the door. Our heroine thought that this was good information, because now it was clear that for now, their target was not her, but Fidel. They both are people who care about the night, so they want to get rid of them. In other words, that person doesn't like it when Roll helps someone. Was there anyone at all who would benefit from keeping the young man under control? The guy asked what to do next. Should they continue investigating the Black Hood? They were clearly not after a good deed. First of all, he smelled bad. Ramil thought to herself that she didn't know anything specific yet, but she was sure that they wanted to harm Arnon, and now it would be nice to catch up and figure out the next step. After which, she said that there was no point in following the Black One. Could they find out who sent him? Looking at the huge gem, the young man muttered that he would do his best. When our heroine was about to leave, she thought to herself that he was much more dangerous than she thought. After some time, she again gathered a gathering of her servants and asked if these people had any grudges against Rolly. Carol replied that she understood that it was the North. Although the young man is a hero of the Empire, from the enemy's point of view, he will be a devil on the battlefield. The girl replied that it was true, but why was it necessary to threaten her instead of killing him? The young man replied that because the work would become tiring if they killed him, and it turned out that the North was behind it, what would happen next? Public opinion towards them has worsened, plus, on top of everything else, war could break out. Ramil said that it is not yet a fact that this is exactly the North, but in principle, we need to try to figure it out with them. The guy objected that, under no circumstances, even if nothing happens to the gentleman, the Imperial Palace would take on such a matter. Will she be able to cope with their knights? Let her stop saying such terrible things altogether. Crod sighed heavily and said that, therefore, instead of killing them, it was necessary to simply eliminate them so that they could not take up this matter again. The boys replied that it was true that it was better to hinder them now so that they would not have a chance to achieve what they wanted. Our heroine wondered if their power was so great that it could put pressure on the treasury. Would it be enough to stop them? Suddenly, the maid asked if she had forgotten to go and propose to Mr. Roll. The girl thought that this was some kind of strong and mysterious power. This problem could be easily solved as soon as she married the knight, because the Crod family was able to protect him. But the next day, our heroine received another refusal from him. The boy said that he wondered why she did it again, because usually, if a proposal was rejected more than 3 times, Ramil continued for him, that it was considered humiliating. In fact, she didn't know that she would have to do it so many times. However, each time she became only more determined, since the gentleman is a very good man. It's hard to explain, but she believes that if she marries him, her days will become more joyful and brighter. The young man muttered that, frankly speaking, he still didn't understand why Crod wanted this so much. Ramil replied that in his place she wouldn't understand anything either, but she thought to herself that to him it all most likely seemed like just a game of a girl in love. However, having read the original work, she knows Roel as well as anyone, but there is still a huge gap between them. But for now, nothing can be done about it, since the young man's point of view differs from hers. After which she asked if he would mind if she went to visit his younger sister. The young man replied that the girl was on the 2nd floor. Roel knows that she gave clothes to the baby, and he is very grateful to her for this. Now he feels indebted. Ramil exclaimed that there was no need to worry. She bought them because she liked the dresses. And so that he wouldn't tell her something like that she shouldn't do this anymore, the girl screamed that she really missed the baby, so she would go to her. The young man did not understand what it was, because he wanted to invite her to go together next time. But it's good that it happened this way, because no matter how much he thinks about it, he thinks that she is too beautiful for him. The girls were very happy to see each other and unanimously asked how things were. Our heroine asked why Ermia didn't wear the dresses that her sister bought her. She wore them yesterday. The little girl muttered that it was just too sad to carry them around the house. The girl replied that she was a little offended, since according to the rules of etiquette, gifted things must be worn. The little one replied that she didn't know, so she would wear them more often. Noticing that the girl was studying mathematics, Ramil thought to herself that there was a limit to what she could pretend. The girl explained that her brother and Baron Dallas help her with this subject. Our heroine found this name very familiar. She had definitely encountered it in the work, but she couldn't remember what kind of person it was. I wonder if she could get an answer if she asked the little girl about it. After which, she asked whether the Baron often came to them, but the girl answered that this month he had not been there yet. He was too busy with his store. Ramil thought that if he was busy with the trading shop, then he was a salesman. However, she didn't remember much, so she would have to check for herself if he was an enemy. After which she asked if Ermia could tell where the Baron's shop was. The girl replied that she would show it on the map and mark it. Almost immediately, she handed her the card and asked why the girl decided to find that man. Our heroine couldn't think of anything better to say than that she also has an interest in mathematics. The little girl admired that the lady not only taught her etiquette, but also showed great interest in the exact sciences. Crod thought to herself that her conscience had simply said goodbye. After which she began to run away, saying that she would go to the Baron right now. Having got into the carriage, the girl told the maid that she immediately needed to meet with a man named Dallas. Carol asked if this was some kind of next offensive operation, if she wanted to buy something. Crod wondered how she knew he was a traitor. The assistant replied that, in fact, his name had been published several times in all the newspapers. Doesn't she know that he is a real celebrity who managed to sell out his self-improvement book? Ramil asked if she thought Crod would buy something like that. The woman replied that, judging by what she likes to read, definitely not. Noticing that our heroine immediately became thoughtful, the assistant shouted that it was necessary to maintain the dignity of the young lady. When asked what he was selling, the maid replied that he was selling a lot of things: clothes, accessories, jewelry, food, and perhaps even weapons. It dawned on the girl that in the story he was the merchant from whom Roel bought weapons. But there was definitely something else. Arriving at the place, our heroine thought to herself that she hoped that the right answer would appear during the meeting. When they rang the bell, nothing happened. Carol assumed that there was no one there. But Ramil said that this was not so. Someone was moving silently inside. If you look closely, you can see that someone broke the door lock and entered. Therefore, she told the woman to stand guard just in case, and she herself went inside. I didn't find anyone on the first floor, so I decided to go check what was happening on the second. When she opened the door and said that she came to see something, a man tried to attack her from the side. But our heroine was a professional in her field, so she immediately blocked the attack. After which she said how cowardly it was to attack from behind, and to herself she noted that she knew it was a black hood. She then turned her attention to the supposed Baron, who was lying unconscious on the table. When the black cloak asked who she was, the girl replied that she had a question too. The mercenary stated that the answer to her question would be that he was not a woman. Our heroine was gradually starting to get irritated by all this, so she said that, apparently, he was completely incapable of capturing the atmosphere. Ramil asks again who he is and why he came to this place. If she doesn't speak clearly, then it won't all end with blows. It's not for nothing that she took the sword in her hand. Realizing that he couldn't cope with her, the attacker immediately jumped out the window and started running. The girl could catch up with him, but the Baron could be in danger now, so who should she choose? Still, she decided that she would catch him later, since first of all it was necessary to save the person. She didn't see any serious injuries on him, but his complexion was very pale. It seemed like they were trying to poison him. After which, she began to beat him and shout for the Baron to come to his senses, as it was necessary to spit out the poison. The man barely muttered that it hurt and that he should stop doing it. Then he pointed his finger at the safe and said one word: stolen. The girl immediately understood that he wanted to say that the Black Hood took what was there. While she was wondering what exactly he had stolen, the Baron lost consciousness again. After some time stretching, our heroine asked why she was interrogated like a criminal. It was she who found him and the attacker on the spot. Is there any news about the Baron at all? The maid replied that thanks to her, he was able to quickly undergo treatment and cope with this problem, but he had not yet regained consciousness. Ramil thought to herself that if she had chased the Black Hood, Dallas would most likely already be dead. After which, she said that she, Fidel, and the Baron have something in common, because of which they are hunted, and it is connected with Roel. They threaten or try to harm the people around him. But there is another person who is connected with him, the one who helps with the study of his illness. If her assumptions are correct, then the next person in danger is Viscount Orm. The original story said he just disappeared, but now it seems strange. After which she gave the order to Seaton and Mark to protect the man, and if anything happened, to immediately report to her. She thought to herself that she was a little worried during the interrogation, and that was why she was feeling sleepy. The maid asked if she could catch the Black Hood. The girl replied that this had to be done since he had stolen something important. Our heroine doesn't know what exactly. All that remains is to wait for the Baron to come to his senses. Then she just passed out with thoughts in her head about how glad she was that she managed to save Dallas. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the man was thinking that this was just a waste of time. Several months had already passed since the start of the study, but if everything had not been stolen last time, everything would have gone faster. Suddenly, the doors swung open and mercenaries appeared, who said that they had not seen the Viscount for a long time. The doctor noted that last time they simply sent bandits, but now they decided to show up with you. It seems I'll have to figure this out myself, after which I shouted why they were trying to stop the research. The young man replied that, of course, the reason was that nasty guy, Roel. Suddenly, a young man materialized in front of the Viscount and stood up to defend him. And another knight took on the second attacker. These were the guys sent by our heroine. When asked who they were, Mark replied that they were the Knights of Crod. They had come to protect him by order of Lady Ramil. Unexpectedly, more mercenaries appeared, who immediately began to help their comrades. When the fight was over, one of them asked the captain what to do with them now. The man replied that he would sort things out. The youth objected that if they killed these two knights, the Crawd family would intervene. But when he decided that it was better not to leave any evidence and swung his sword, a stone flew at his head. It was our heroine who said that she couldn't sleep peacefully because she had only sent 2 people, so she decided to intervene. Are the 2 of them not even capable of dealing with 4 attackers? The boys exclaimed that they were not such monsters as their mistress. The girl was indignant at why they were calling names to the man who came to save them. One of the mercenaries pointed a sword at her and said that she was too relaxed, but in fact there was an enemy in front of her. The girl replied that, okay, let one of them attack, and if that doesn't work, then he'll sit on his knees and tell everything. And let them also take into account that if they remain silent, then beatings cannot be avoided. The attacker was outraged that she was so arrogant, so he immediately rushed to attack her. But the man didn't even have time to approach her properly before his weapon broke in half. Their captain shouted that she was using aura. Let them not even think of attacking senselessly. When our heroine declared that they should not forget that she could beat them to death, the order was given to attack her immediately. This fight ended very quickly, as the opponents could do absolutely nothing with her. Ramil noted to herself that they were so weak that she didn't even have to put in much effort, after which she joyfully ran towards the Viscount, asking if everything was okay with him. The man asked in shock if she had killed everyone. Crawd replied that she had simply knocked them unconscious. She needed to find out who was behind all this. But suddenly the voice of Seaton was heard, who said that they were all dead. The girl exclaimed, in what sense she didn't hit them that hard? But the young man replied that she had nothing to do with it, let her see it was similar to the case with the Baron. It's the same with everyone else. Judging by the color of his skin, it looks like they drank poison beforehand. This method has recently been used by members of the Assassin's Guild. Only in case of successful completion of the task is an antidote given. When they returned back to the estate, the Viscount said that it was better late than never and thanked them for saving him. But how did they know that the Black Hood would come looking for him? Ramil explained that she heard from the little girl that he was close with Sir Roel. Recently, the Baron was ambushed by mercenaries and items from his safe were stolen. Of course, this is her speculation, but she believes that they are aimed at people around Mr. Arnon in order to isolate him. It dawned on the man that the reason they kept interfering with the research was to keep him under control so that he could not succeed and help Roel recover. Our heroine asked him to calm down and not to be nervous. The Viscount, in turn, asked what they stole from the safe. The girl answered that it was unknown. Until Dallas wakes up, we won't find out. Orm muttered that he had a guess, and if it was correct, he should contact the master directly. Most likely, these were documents of ownership of the mansion. Our heroine immediately began to panic that they wanted to deprive him of his place of residence. The Baron, who can testify that the documents were stolen, is unconscious. Arnon will have no choice but to do what he is told. No matter how much he begged, he and his younger sister would be kicked out, but she noted to herself that everything was exactly the same as in the original. Apparently, she should tell him about it right away. Suddenly, the man said that it was not relevant to the matter at hand, but could he ask something? Did she come to the capital to propose to him? The girl answered that it was true. When the Viscount began to say that he would like to say something then, the girl immediately grabbed the sword and asked if he was against it. Orm immediately exclaimed that no, with both hands and feet for it. The man really hopes that they will get closer to the master and eventually get married. He will do everything possible to help her. The only one who can save Roel, who is in danger, is Lady Ramil. Our heroine thought to herself that, in fact, the main danger for him is she. Suddenly, a maid burst in and said that they had received an urgent message from the Arnon mansion. It was a letter from the little girl, which said, "Please help," and the girl realized that they had already arrived. When our heroine arrived at their mansion, she immediately asked Ermia if she was very scared. The girl answered that a loud noise was coming from the office. What should she do? Ramil told her not to worry, everything would be fine, and then ordered the maids to take her to her room. When she was taken away, our heroine asked how things were. The woman replied that bandits suddenly burst in and started to riot, demanding that they leave this mansion. The girl immediately went to his office and saw that everything there was turned upside down, and the guy was sitting on the floor next to a wheelchair that had been thrown on its side. Crawd immediately ran up to the young man and asked if he was okay. The guy didn't even have time to answer anything when a bandit grabbed her by the shoulder and asked who she was. Our heroine turned sharply to him and began to twist her fingers, so much so that the young man howled in pain. After a short period of time, only one of them remained intact, who immediately began to ask for mercy and say that they had made a mistake. When the girl exclaimed that it was too late, the Viscount stopped her and said that he thought that was enough. The guys said that they really didn't know that it was a stolen bond, they were deceived, saying that they would be given the house for free, so let them forgive them. Our heroine hissed that the apology should be addressed to the gentleman and not to her. Suddenly, knights appeared in the room and asked what had happened here. The girl gave the order to put these bandits in prison immediately. Mark immediately set to work and said that they should be grateful that their limbs remained whole and unharmed. Our heroine asked for forgiveness and said that she had gone too far because she thought that they were trying to kill him. In fact, today the Viscount was attacked by intruders who wanted to harm him, and for several days they tried to poison the Baron. At the moment, he is in the hospital. The man exclaimed that the girl had shown herself to be a real heroine and had saved everyone. If it weren't for her, they would already be dead. The young man admired her and thanked her for her help. Our heroine objected that she was simply lucky to find them. The guy said that if it weren't for the lady, he wouldn't have even found out anything, and he wouldn't have understood why he was kicked out of his own house. Ramil said that, in that case, perhaps he would finally accept her proposal of marriage. It is too dangerous for the master to remain alone in this estate. Arnon muttered that if this was all because of him, then the Crawd mansion would also become dangerous in the future, so it was better to be here alone. Our heroine exclaimed, was he really devaluing the strength of her family? But the knight objected that this was not so. The girl said that she is not offering for the sake of something. Why does he think that they will go to a loss because of him? After which she asked the Viscount whether this marriage was a problem from the point of view of Crawd. The man answered that, of course, no, it was such an honor and advantage to have such a famous hero as a relative. Firstly, because of the Lord, it will be possible to gather many talented and famous knights. The economic and military benefits that this will bring are indescribable. Ramil noted to herself that he was quite eloquent, but out loud she said that if he felt burdensome, then he should consider it an investment. The young man asked her to give him some time to think. It wouldn't be long. Our heroine replied that, of course, she knows how to wait and she has patience to spare. The Viscount asked why he was still thinking about it. It was a very good offer. From now on, enemies will attack him without stopping, so it is too dangerous to remain in the capital. The guy replied that he knew this, as he thought, is why the lady wants to marry him. The man answered that he had been in love with the gentleman for a long time, and that was why he was pursuing him. Arnon asked what would happen to him if suddenly this favor disappeared for some reason. Orm realized that this marriage was not really on equal terms. One day she might suddenly cool down and announce a divorce. Then the gentleman would have no rights, and he could be thrown out on the street. But he replied that he still wanted him to get married. It was unknown how long this marriage would last, but at the moment he needed protection. He also believes that he should tell his younger sister about this himself, so he will call her. When the little girl came into the room, the young man asked her what she thought of Lady Ramil. The girl replied that she was really a cool and nice girl. The young man said that, to be honest, she proposed to him. Urmia was delighted and asked what he had answered about him. Roel said that she asked for time to think things over, so he decided that he should talk to her. The little girl replied that she liked all this very much since they were both very good people, and if two such bright people are together, then that's just wonderful. The brother replied that things might not be so rosy because if he married her, there was a high probability that they would join the Crawd family. If suddenly they all look like nobles from the past, then the girl may have problems. Urmia said that she understood what he was worried about. She would do everything possible to look good in the eyes of adults. The young man hugged her and said that he was sorry that he had raised her in such conditions, that she had to say such things. Meanwhile, our heroine sat in another room and went over in her head the phrases she would need to say if he suddenly decided to refuse her again. Suddenly, the Viscount ran in and said that things were not going well. He had spoken to the gentleman and he thought that she might leave him. The girl wondered why he thought so. Maybe she had behaved too frivolously, proposed on the first date and continued to do so even after he refused. Ramil skipped the dating stage and just proposed marriage. Apparently, he thought she was immature. The man said that it seemed better to just kidnap him. Crod replied that she was considering this option in case of refusal. Suddenly, a little girl appeared and said that her older brother wanted to talk to the lady. On the way, our heroine calmed herself down and said that there was no need to be nervous. This time, he would definitely agree. Unexpectedly, the young man agreed and said that he would do everything possible to become a good partner for her. The girl couldn't believe her ears that they had finally become a real couple. After which she bowed and said that she would also do everything possible to become a worthy partner for him. Suddenly the guy said that perhaps it was shameless, but could he ask her for one favor? He wanted to set conditions for marriage. Our heroine was taken aback and thought to herself that she hoped that this was not what she was now imagining. At least it wasn't a ban on touching, after which she replied that he could calmly tell her everything. But the young man said that if for some reason he suddenly leaves her family, then please let him take responsibility for the baby. Ramil asked for what other reason. The young man muttered that if they suddenly get divorced, Crod objected that such a thing could not happen. Roel thought to himself that if he had to part with his sister, he would prefer that she remain safe. Our heroine replied that it would not be a problem. She could give him a guarantee, then she signed the contract. Arnon then handed her another paper and told her to please write down her terms. The girl thought to herself that she didn't have any specific conditions, maybe kissing at least once a day or sleeping together once a week. When the silence dragged on, the guy asked if everything was okay. Ramil came to her senses and replied that she would add the conditions later, when she thought of them. Then the boys became embarrassed and promised each other that they would take care of each other in the future. After some time, the hour finally came when they would return to Crod together. Our heroine joyfully exclaimed, "Good afternoon." The young man had the most gloomy expression on his face and muttered, "Welcome." The girl thought to herself that leaving the house after 3 days was not at all easy, so she said that the estate was empty. The young man replied that since there would no longer be those who had lived there before, he was sorry that he had to hurry so much. Ramil noted that he seemed very attached to the mansion. The guy replied that this place was a gift from the Imperial family, his first home. Our heroine suggested in that case not to rush and look around. She thought to herself that even in this mansion a lot had happened to her. She proposed on the very first day of her arrival. The girl continued to do this day after day, and eventually she finally achieved her goal. Here she met the little girl, and also embarrassed herself many times regarding the rules of etiquette. Plus, she managed to see the devastated Roel. She couldn't even imagine what state he was in. But, as she promised herself when she came to this world, she will definitely help make a good ending to Roel, and change the name of the novel to The Sword in Love instead of The Wounded Sword. After a short excursion, the young man said that this was enough, thank you very much, but they could go now. When they went outside, our heroine asked who these people were standing near her maid. When asked what happened, Carol replied that the problem was right in front of her, and she should deal with it herself. The girl said that her name was Heria. She was a former member of the Knights of Lord Roel, and Fidel exclaimed that he would really marry this lady. Arnon replied that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and ignored the guy's question, which made him extremely angry. Kira said that she came because she heard that the gentleman was leaving the capital. The young man asked if he was really leaving because of the wedding. Roel answered that he was. Fidel said that he was offended that he lied about not having any relationship. The knight asked him for forgiveness. When the boy exclaimed if he could give them some advice, the wife put her hand on his shoulder and ingratiatingly said that it was enough chatter. The knight said that in fact, not very good things had happened recently, so they were lucky that they were okay, and then began to explain what exactly. The young man was taken aback by what he heard and said that fortunately he had recently been fired. His boss kept talking nonsense, so the guy went to the vice minister personally and had a little argument with him. And the next day, the young man saw that the table in his office was no longer there. Our heroine asked what about joining the knighthood of Crod. She also advised Viscount Dallas and Baron Orm to come to them for their own safety. After a short consultation, the boys answered that they agreed and would come with the Baron when he had fully recovered. Meanwhile, the maid reported that the carriage had already arrived, but unfortunately, there was no low-entrance carriage. Our heroine replied that there was nothing to be done, then she would have to lift and carry it, and once home, she would take care of it. The young man felt awkward and muttered that it was because of him that she was always in trouble. The girl said that everything was fine, and without thinking twice, she picked him up in her arms to carry him. Having seated him more comfortably, she added that this was the only way she could think of. Looking at this, the boys thought to themselves that they could completely trust her with Mr. Roll. As they set off, it dawned on Ramil that she could hug him at least twice a day when she put him in the carriage. A little later, Crod reported that a little more, and they would arrive at the place, and drew attention to the fact that the young man was clearly very nervous. When she began to calm him down and say that everyone in her family was the same as her, the carriage suddenly braked and the girl hit her head. Ramil immediately said that she was fine, and at the same time screamed at how they even drive. The man said that someone from her family had come, so the girl decided to go out and see who it was. It turned out to be her younger brother, who asked how she managed to get consent to the marriage proposal. Our heroine replied that with the help of her beauty, wasn't it her destiny to guess her simple-minded brother? Siberi said that he came to meet them according to the rules of etiquette. The girl was surprised that such a rule even existed. The young man said that it was not surprising that she did not know about it. Our heroine hissed that he must have completely lost his fear during her absence. The brother said that he wanted to meet Roel because the first impression is very important, so he came in person. After which he opened the carriage doors, introduced himself and said that he had been appointed as an escort for Mr. Arnon. It is truly a great honor for him to meet such a wonderful person. The young man replied that the feeling was mutual and added that he and his sister turned out to be very similar. They immediately started fighting with each other and shouting at each other about how they were alike, since they didn't even say they were brother and sister. The young man replied that, in fact, they had the same last names and hair color, so it wasn't hard to guess. Our heroine immediately told him to put on makeup upon returning to the estate. The guy was indignant. What's the joy? Suddenly a little girl appeared and said that the carriage had suddenly stopped for some reason and that something had happened. Ramil immediately introduced Urmia to her younger brother, Siberi. The guy stated that she was the gentleman's younger sister, so now she could call him brother. The girl thought to herself that he had the same gentle touch as Lady Ramil. When they arrived at the mansion, Roel was worried about how the heads of the Crod family would receive them. He really hoped that they would be received favorably. It was clear from them that these were not simple people. The Shield of the West, Seal, and the Spear of the West, Liera. When the parents introduced themselves, the boy did the same in response and thanked them for their hospitality. The man shook his hand and thanked him for marrying his daughter. The woman glanced at the little girl and asked what kind of child she was. The little girl immediately introduced herself and said that she had come from the Viscounty, Arnon. She began to panic in her mind that she needed to make a good impression, but she was stuttering. Liera muttered that she heard that the master had a younger sister, but it was still unexpected. Our heroine exclaimed why she behaves like this with people who are too tired. If she has something to say, she can do it tomorrow. Therefore, today it is better to rest a little. But she thought to herself, why is she suddenly like this? But Mother still continued to press them and say that it was all somehow unexpected. The guy started making excuses that the reason Urmia stuttered in her greeting was because he hadn't taught her properly. Couldn't she have been more lenient? Liera asked why they were all reacting like that, because she just wanted to say that the baby was much cuter than the woman thought. After some time, the parents treated the baby to various foods and told her to eat whatever she wanted. The guy said that even though there had been a misunderstanding recently, he thanked her very much for supporting his sister. The girl replied that there was no need to thank her, because Urmia was now her family, so it was natural. She thought to herself that the family was confirmed by law, so that she would never be separated from him. Suddenly, the father asked when they planned to hold the wedding vow ceremony. Now they can rest, and tomorrow everything can be done. When the young man asked what it was, the girl explained that it was their family tradition, so he would see everything tomorrow. The next day, the guy was dressed in some strange outfit and was driven down the corridor, where he ran into Ramil. Our heroine was dressed in approximately the same outfit and said that there was clearly not enough fabric. Does this style suit her? The young man immediately blushed and muttered that it suited her very well. But first of all, could she explain what the rite of an oath is? Opening the doors, behind which was a huge staircase that led down, Crawd said that she would explain everything when they went down. Roll said that he can't go down the stairs on his own now, so he needs to ask others for help. The girl said she could carry it in, like last time, but the guy objected that it was only for a few seconds then, so it was okay. Our heroine said that she is a knight of Crawd, and they can lift up to 200 kilograms. So don't worry, she'll be fine and she'll get him down safe and sound. I thought to myself that this could be a little dangerous. Now I understand why the main characters try so hard to control themselves. On the way, the young man said that it must be very heavy, so he asked for forgiveness. The girl began to answer that everything was fine, but then she noticed his bare chest. Our heroine immediately lost her balance and flew down with the knight in her arms. After the fall, the young man worriedly asked if everything was okay with her. Ramil immediately jumped up and said that everything was fine. It even turned out better. They got there quickly. Roll said that he could not even imagine that there was such a large cave under their mansion. The girl replied that the first count created it. The man who founded her family was responsible for the rebellion of the feudal estates and vassals. It is said that he moved a lot due to attacks from neighboring countries and pressure from the Imperial family. They say that after he was betrayed by his close associates, he took refuge in this cave. The knight replied that he understood that future generations should know about the suffering of their predecessors. But why was a marriage ceremony being held in this place? Ramil explained that he was not alone in this place. When he saw his knight, he asked why she followed him. The assistant explained that she had to protect the count. The man objected that he was no longer a count, and with her talent she would succeed wherever she went. The girl asked why he gave her land in her name. The guy answered that it was her salary, but she objected that he gave the land only to her. The count is a very close person to her, so how can she leave him alone? The young man asked with interest how it all ended. Our heroine explained that the knight she mentioned was the first countess. The guy stated that Crawd is truly an amazing breed. Ramil thanked him and said that drinking the groundwater in this place means sharing all troubles among themselves. It is also the place where the first count decided to get married. Roel clarified that if they do this, they will become official husband and wife or something. The girl replied that everything is correct. Watching him drink, our heroine thought to herself, is it possible to be so handsome just by drinking water? When he blushed and handed her the cup, the girl asked what happened. Did the water have a strange taste or something? The young man exclaimed that no, she could drink calmly. Our heroine did not understand what was happening. Could it really be alcohol? But after taking a sip, she realized that it was just water and said that we could go back up. When asked if everything was okay, the guy mumbled that people call this an indirect kiss. Ramil froze in place and thought to herself, why didn't he tell her about this earlier, so that she could enjoy it? After some time, our heroine reported that the next step of the ritual was a meal together. When asked if he would like a drink, the guy replied that he could, since he often drank, and he liked it. Because alcohol is something that is always present on the battlefield, you can't do without it. The girl noted to herself that in the original work there were moments with drinking from time to time, but she didn't know that he liked it. Over a glass of wine, the guy asked if there would be a separate ceremony for the wedding. Our heroine answered that yes, but she thought it would be worth holding it somewhere in a year. Living happily as a married couple for hundreds of days and then having a celebration is a tradition in their family. Since the first countess had the status of a slave, there was a lot of opposition from those around her, so it took time to carry out the ceremony properly. The young man asked if this meant that they had just gotten engaged today, but the girl replied that they had gotten married. When he said that there were still many days before the wedding, Crawd exclaimed that they had registered the marriage, and that was more important than the ceremony. Then she offered a drink and thought to herself that now only the last ritual remained. After some time, they were already lying in bed together, holding hands and in deathly silence. When Ramil said that this was the final ritual, I thought to myself that this was so awkward that it would drive me crazy. The guy thought that she had fallen asleep and began to thank her for everything, because he thought that before meeting her, he was on the verge of collapse. The famous Imperial knight who cannot hold a sword, he thought that the end of everything had already come. Being obsessed with recovery, he completely forgot that there are people who are dear to him. If Lady Ramil had not appeared in time, he would most likely have lost everyone. The young man is very grateful to her for pulling him out of this swamp of misfortune. He doesn't even know how many times he needs to thank her to at least somehow repay her. The girl thought to herself that she could not help but do this for the sake of the man she really liked. Then she turned to him, but saw that he had already fallen asleep and thought to herself that she looked like an angel. The next day, the maid asked where Mr. Roll was. Our heroine answered that his father had called him. Carol glanced at the bed and asked if anything had happened last night. After all, the girl read a lot of pornographic stories the day before the ceremony. Crod was outraged that she read them just like that. How could she even think that this was for the first night? The assistant said that since she had no experience, she thought that the lady was learning everything with the help of a book. Ramil objected that she had actually read it with her. Carol replied that she was actually still single, so please don't drag her into this story. Ramil said that they were just sleeping, holding hands. What else were you supposed to do? The maid replied that she was asking a strange question with an innocent expression on her face. After which she reported that her mother had called her. The girl thought to herself that for some reason she had a bad feeling. When asked why she called her, the woman replied that it was nothing special. Our heroine asked what kind of letters these were. Her mother explained that they contained news of their marriage vows. When asked to whom she sends them, Liera replied that to her vassals, of course. How, in her opinion, should the vassals react that she, who was not interested in either suitors or dates, suddenly got married? Our heroine replied that they should send mountains of gifts in honor of the wedding, the woman muttered, even though she is her daughter. But why is she like that? First of all, everyone will be interested in what kind of person her husband, Mr. Roll from the capital, is, and they may not like it. Her mother also had a hard time at first. She remembers everything that happened 25 years ago as if it were yesterday. That day, ladies from aristocratic families invaded their home and first suggested having a tea party. She was young then and thought it was some kind of welcoming ceremony, but they did it specifically so that they could ignore her during tea drinking. However, her mother is not one to be timid, so she kicked the table, started waving her sword, and everyone immediately fell silent. And before that, they looked down on the residents of the capital. It turned out that their parents ordered them to do so. She should have seen the look on her father's face when he ran up to them, thinking something serious was going on. When he saw his wife, who was dealing with the arrogant aristocrats, he muttered for them to continue. He would not distract them. After that day, the vassals who were there disappeared, so let him warn Roel just in case that there will be a tea party. She immediately went and told the young man everything and asked him to prepare himself mentally, because sooner or later it would happen anyway. Then she asked if everything was okay with him, since he didn't look well. I thought to myself that there was something in the novel connected with his social circle. So she took him by the hand and said that if something was bothering him, he could tell her. The young man replied that it was more fear, since he had previously had to deal with aristocrats. Once upon a time, a guy went to one of the celebrations. Since he was invited for the first time, he simply had to be present, because if the reason for not appearing was unfounded, the inviting party would be dissatisfied. He was met by a young man who, smiling affably, said that it was nice to meet him. His name was Kedek. As the young man thought, "The night is a real beauty. Now you can go inside." Holding out a glass, the new acquaintance asked if he drank. Roel answered that he did. The young man said that it was good, since among the knights there are people who do not drink. That is why he asked. Arnon replied that there are few of them, since most of them like to drink. After a fight, you always want to drink. The young man asked if there was alcohol on the battlefield at all, or if it was difficult to get. When the knight replied that he mostly did, but that it hadn't been happening much lately, the boy sighed heavily and said that it was very sad that even a drink wasn't available when he wanted it. People kept coming and coming. Roel thought to himself that they needed to be avoided as much as possible. But suddenly, he was loudly introduced and said that this was the man who brought them victory in the war. Those present admired him, that he was a real hero, and it was a great honor for them to meet him. The young man thought to himself that everyone was quite friendly, but he had heard that nobles valued birth highly. Perhaps this was a misunderstanding. Then a servant came up to Sedek and told him something, so the guy immediately said that he had to go away for a while, but he would be back soon. As soon as he left, everyone immediately lost interest in the night, and Arnon decided to go to the terrace to get some fresh air. While he stood on the balcony, he thought about how cool it was outside and why everyone else was drinking so much. Suddenly, Roel heard someone on the floor above asking why he invited the Knight Centurion at all. Was it some kind of exhibition? One of the boys replied that it was probably just for show, because the Count usually liked such things. Another said that shaking the hand of this commoner almost gave him goosebumps. The girl objected that his face was quite cute, but the young man said that what was the point of beauty if there was no basic thing? Perhaps he was a slave, not a commoner, or perhaps even an illegitimate child. Just a minute ago they were laughing and talking together, but these people turned out to be so hypocritical. Therefore, he decided that it was better to leave and asked where the Count was. The servant answered that he was probably on the left side of the corridor. The knight thought to himself that he would tell him that he was not feeling well, so he would ask him to understand, and he declined. Near the door, he heard Sidek shouting why he was being asked to pay for the treatment. The interlocutor objected that he had been wounded trying to protect the Count. The young man continued to shout, "How can a knight demand that an aristocrat pay for medical expenses because he only has one broken arm? Let him tell him that if he sees him again, he will not leave it like that." Arnon did not understand whether this was the same person as before, how he could treat the one who protected him like this. All nobles are absolutely the same, so there is no place for a young man among them. Our heroine thought to herself that this incident was described in the novel, which is why he was so nervous when he first came to Crawd. Then the girl asked what about her, was she really the same in his eyes as they were? Arnon replied that he trusted her because she appeared next to him in difficult times and helped him. Ramil muttered that it turns out that the gentleman trusts everyone who helps him. The guy objected that that was not what she meant. It was just that usually, instead of helping someone who was having difficulties, people turned away. The girl thought to herself how many bad people he had met in his life, and replied that he should trust the people she trusts. She sees right through people, so she doesn't let unpleasant people near her, but she thought to herself that some of them are annoying, but most are good. The young man exclaimed that he would do everything possible not to ruin the reputation of her family. Then the knight suddenly pulled his hand back and asked forgiveness for having grabbed it without thinking. The girl thought to herself in disappointment, how can they even increase the progress of the relationship if he doesn't even hold her hand? It seems I'll have to ask the maid for advice again, since she knows more about this, after which she jumped up and said that she had one thing to do with Carol, so she needed to go to her. The guy decided that she ran away so quickly precisely because he suddenly grabbed her hand. Who would like that? But why did he feel regret when he had to remove his hand? He wanted to continue holding it further. Then the young man came to his senses and began to drive these thoughts away from himself, since there is nothing good in thinking about such things. We need to think about tea drinking. At such an event, the main focus is on conversation, and he has absolutely no conversational skills. Will he be able to cope? What if he makes a mistake in front of the guests, or embarrasses himself in some way, for example by knocking over a cup? Then he remembered the words he had said to the girl and decided that instead of worrying, it would be better to give it his all. In order to win a battle, you need to know information about the enemy, so you need to find someone who knows about the young ladies among the nobles. Meanwhile, our heroine informed her younger brother that someone was trying to harm Mr. Roel. This is just a guess, but it is clear that the goal is the fall of Arnon. Siberi asked why she was so suddenly alarmed. Let her be calmer. The girl objected that this was not a joke, but a really dangerous situation. Of course, there will be no threat to their family, but still, she is here to say that they must prepare in advance. The young man wondered who dared to mess with the hero of the empire and try to harm him. But it doesn't really matter because his sister is next to him. A person with incredible talent who instills in others a sense of their own inferiority. A monster that taunts its opponents with a sword slung over its shoulder and achieves victory. Suddenly, the voice of a servant was heard, who announced that Mr. Roel was asking him for permission to enter. After a positive answer, a young man immediately appeared and asked if he had disturbed him, since he had something to talk to him about. Siberi replied that he had not. After some time, Arnon listened to the stories about all the aristocrats and added to the diary about the last one, Viscount Ryan, who was very interested in history. After which he thanked the young man from the bottom of his heart, since this was very useful information for him. The guy replied that it is natural for family members to help each other. Roll was touched that his wife's younger brother recognized him as a member of his family. The young man added that, to be honest, he did not need to prepare that much, since it was just a public meeting. The knight said that he could not humiliate the dignity of the Crod family with his mistake. Siberi muttered that his mother had long ago destroyed all doubts. Arnon then thanked him for always taking good care of Heria. The interlocutor replied that taking care of a baby is a natural skill for the second older brother. Mr. Roll is her first elder brother, so it is natural for the little one to be lower on the list, therefore he is the second elder brother. In any case, there is no need to be grateful for this, since he always wanted to have a sister. The guy asked in surprise, but what about Ramil, because she is his sister? The young man became very serious and replied that they were not brother and sister, but complete strangers to each other. Then he realized that he meant that he would like to have a younger one. He wants to feel like a brother. The knight asked what the little girl was doing now, since he had not seen her since he came here. The young man replied that he thought she had just gone to take a nap. Don't little children sleep a lot? Meanwhile, the little girl was rushing around the room and thinking about what she should do. She didn't know who to go with today, because it would soon be time for dinner. Suddenly, a maid came into the bedroom and noted that it seemed the baby had been waiting for her. Has she decided with whom she will dine today? It seems like yesterday she did it with Siberi. Maybe today she will dine with the Count and Madame. After all, Heria has not yet dined with them, and they are waiting for her most of all. When there was no answer, the woman asked if she was comfortable with them. The girl exclaimed that of course she was. The girl just thinks that she will irritate them, so it's better to eat alone today. Suddenly, her older brothers appeared and announced that they had come to eat together. The maid objected that they had eaten together yesterday, but the guy replied, "So what?" The woman replied that then today he could eat with Mr. Roll and with the little lady tomorrow. The young man hissed in what sense. Carol noted to herself that even their faces were the same, like brother and sister, after which she added that the baby would be having dinner with his parents today. The young man replied that it was okay, then the three of them could go together. Upon seeing the boys, the knight asked if something had happened. Siberi said that he needed to tell the parents that they wanted to eat together. Roll started to worry if they were bothering them. The guy replied that no, because he came too, so nothing would happen. After a short time, a knight appeared and said that the madam had refused her son and that Arnon and Heria could come in. The young man was taken aback by this turn of events and muttered in what sense. Then he immediately came to his senses and said that nothing terrible had happened and that they should not worry about him and let it pass. When they left, the young man asked if he was not their child and why they didn't let him in. Meanwhile, our heroine ran to the maid and asked if she had 1 minute for her. The woman immediately interrupted her and asked if she had forgotten that Viscount Orm was still present at the estate. The assistant knew that this would happen. He had come yesterday, but their lady had not even honored him with the opportunity to show her face. Our heroine immediately exclaimed that she had plans to visit him today and abruptly went somewhere, but the maid objected that she was heading in the wrong direction. After a while, she already asked for forgiveness for being distracted by other things and not visiting him for a long time. The man replied that everything was fine, because he had spent his time usefully in such a wonderful place. The Viscount bought the goods needed for the research at the market, and it turned out to be larger than the capital. Plus, goods from the beastmen arrive here much faster. By defeating the monsters, they can easily obtain magic stones. Perhaps with their help, the exploration will go better. It's still a hypothesis, but he believes that the magic stone is absolutely necessary to restore Mr. Roll. The girl noted to herself that he looked confident and said that she would give him as many as he wanted. Her family has been making them for a long time, so most likely there is something in the warehouse. The man was amazed that finding such a stone in the capital was as difficult as getting a star from the sky. At some point, the demand for magic stones suddenly increased, so he could not get them for any amount of money. So thank you, because if it weren't for the lady, he would have spent all his money on the purchase. Our heroine handed him some ring and told him to use it instead of money. The man asked why she was giving it to him. Ramil explained that this is a ring with the signet of their family. In this territory, he can buy anything if he has such a ring. When the man began to thank her, she replied that he was trying so hard for the sake of the master, so it was nothing. Suddenly, he handed her some kind of package and said that since he and Sir Roll were a couple, she should know about it. Our heroine thought to herself that even if she looked at the research results, she still wouldn't understand anything. On the first day, the legs became paralyzed due to the disappearance of the aura. On the third day, the patient continued to complain of pain, but fortunately, it quickly subsided. On the seventh day, although he had no strength at the moment, the patient refused to eat because of a feeling of loss which caused anxiety about his future condition. Ramil noted to herself that she had seen this in the original work, but reading it again, she had mixed feelings. But to our great surprise, our heroine noticed something strange. It was said there that when the patient was asked what happened on the day of the incident, he could not remember anything. Part of his memory was lost due to the violence of the aura. An assassination attempt on the Baron and the Viscount, unidentified people in black hoods, and this time lost memories. None of this was in the original work. The girl thought that everything would be easy because she knew history, but it turns out that she didn't know everything. Perhaps the author of the novel simply liked to leave hidden clues for readers to figure out on their own, but what does that matter now? Crawd Manor was also a place that wasn't even mentioned in the book. She just had to make sure Roel didn't get desperate and ended up happy in the end. But for this, you still need to try hard, and in general, suddenly she remembered her past life for a reason. After some time, our heroine looked in on her husband and said that they had not been able to have dinner together last night, so she thought that they could at least have breakfast. They felt extremely awkward in each other's presence, so for now they used different rooms. When the young man agreed to have a meal together, the girl asked what books he had been reading since the morning. The young man replied that history, medicine, and the like. Ramil took one of them, on which were written incomprehensible words, and asked what it was. Roel explained that it was written in an ancient language. This is all for the sake of the guests who may soon visit the estate. He studies in advance everything that they like. He's just not very good at Soviet conversations, so he decided to prepare. If you know in advance about the interests of your interlocutor, you can have a calm and fun time. Our heroine was indignant. Did he really sit here all night? The guy immediately said that he understood that he was overdoing it. However, this tea party reminds him of the mission he has taken on for the first time in a long time, and he really wants to succeed. The girl noted to herself that she hadn't even thought about such a thing. She always thought only about herself, and didn't take his opinion into account. After which she took one of the books and said that then they would study everything together, since it would be unrealistic for him to manage to read such a stack. Since he is a member of their family, she, as the master's wife, must help him in everything. Having spent the whole day studying when it got dark, our heroine simply passed out in her chair. The young man noted to himself that she was clearly tired, so it was time to finish. Suddenly, the girl came to her senses and realized how long she had been sleeping. So that she wouldn't feel awkward, the knight also decided to pretend that he had just woken up. Ramil immediately sighed with relief that she was not the only one. Therefore, she said that naturally he didn't sleep all night, so it's understandable why he falls asleep. The young man decided to ask if there was anyone among the aristocrats whom he should be especially wary of. The girl muttered that no one came to mind, but she thought to herself that anyone who started to make fun of him would get a punch in the eye. Meanwhile, some guy was approaching Crawd, who was telling himself that he hadn't been there for a long time. The next day, the aristocrats gathered for tea and discussed that they could not even imagine that the lady would get married. At first, it was all perceived as a joke. It was very interesting what kind of person her husband is. Roel started to ride up to them. The guys were delighted, saying that he was a battlefield hero and was making a strong impression on people. He simply dazzles with his beauty. Are there such beautiful people? Then two of them stood up, greeted him, and said that their names were Baman and Tian. The knight also introduced himself, said that he was Ramil's husband and that he was pleased to meet them. Then he pointed to the boxes and said that these were small gifts for them, as he wanted to please them. When Baman opened his box, he was delighted that this was the book he had been looking for more than 3 years. Arnon said that he heard that he was interested in medicine, so he prepared this publication on medicine from the Eastern Kingdom. The guy asked in surprise how he managed to get it. The young man replied that he already had it. He just thought that he would need it more. The young man exclaimed that he was sincerely touched that he had been given such a precious thing. Everything seemed to be going well, except for one young man who said nothing, his face standing out from the moment the knight entered the tea party. His name is Carlos Marinum. The guy is very keen on fencing. When Roel said that he knew what he was into, the guy mumbled something unintelligible and continued to sit silently. The young man asked if perhaps he had done or said something wrong, but Carlos objected that everything was fine. He just felt a little unwell, so he would go out for a walk for a couple of minutes. Arnon thought to himself that he must have been feeling really bad since he didn't say anything at all. Maybe he should ask for some medicine. Baman said that there was no need to worry so much, he was probably just sick from the journey. But Tian objected that it was hardly connected with seasickness, it must be about Lady Ramil. The friend was immediately indignant that he was saying such a thing, but the guy objected that her husband should know about it. Previously, Carlos often visited the girl when there were meetings at the estate. And a few years ago he began to visit the county alone, each time bringing with him a huge number of gifts. Marinum presented gifts not only to Lady Ramil, but even to all the employees of the mansion. He clearly didn't do all this just for the sake of it, but wanted to attract the girl's attention. When Roel immediately became gloomy, the youth exclaimed that he simply thought it would be useful for him to know it was not out of malice. The young man smiled wryly and replied that everything was fine, thank you very much for telling him. When everyone had left, the knight thought to himself, what a strange feeling this was. He had not heard from the girl about Sir Carlos's courtship. He has a beautiful appearance, is a good swordsman, and, moreover, is the heir to a count's family. And what can he offer her? The young man has absolutely nothing of this. But it's better not to jump to conclusions. There must be a reason why the girl didn't tell him about it. After all, what kind of relationship is there between them? If they had a special relationship, then most likely he did not have time to propose to her. Carlos standing in the distance, holding some kind of box in his hands. Looking closely, the young man realized that it was nothing other than a wedding ring. After dinner, the guys discussed that Roel prepared very well and even took care of taste preferences. It is simply magnificent, both inside and out. Bauman said that, if you think about it, Carlos didn't even come to dinner. Tian exclaimed, exactly. Because of him, he almost ruined the atmosphere. It was necessary to keep his mouth shut. Although he had a gloomy expression on his face, thank God that Roel was not offended. Suddenly the voice of our heroine was heard, asking what he could have said to him that made him gloomy. Fearing being beaten, the young man shouted that they had told him about Marinum, that he had visited her. The girl exclaimed, was it really jealousy, but why all of a sudden? The boys said that the young man liked Lady Ramil, and Mr. Roel probably noticed it. Our heroine exclaimed, in what sense does Carlos like her? Did they really tell Arnon such nonsense? Tian objected that this was not nonsense. When they got together, he was always looking only for her. Besides, the young man was constantly bringing her a bunch of gifts. Wasn't that right? Does she still think that this is impossible? If she still doesn't believe him, then let him tell her what happened today. Although Roel had a wonderful tea party, paying attention to everyone, Carlos was in a daze all day. The guy is just sure that it is because Lady Ramil got married, he is not making anything up. Our heroine replied that everything was clear, so first she should ask him directly. After she left, the guys started discussing that they thought they would die right now. At least they would definitely be beaten. Crod became softer when she got married. Marinum's room, looking at his expression, she asked if he had just been crying. The young man muttered that, no, it seemed to her the girl thought to herself that she really did like it. Our heroine decided not to waste time and said that she needed to ask him a very serious question. Does he like her? The young man asked in shock why she decided to ask about this. Ramil panicked. What kind of reaction was this? Was it really true? Then she asked for forgiveness, theatrically grabbed her head and said that there was no need to love her because he was not her type. Besides, she was already married, so let him give up. The young man interrupted her and asked if he could ask why she was now talking such nonsense. Crod muttered that she really didn't like it. The guy was indignant, that he should have. She wasn't his type at all. The girl exhaled and said that she was very happy, but how dare Tian mislead her? When the young man asked what it was all about, our heroine began to tell him briefly. After that, the guy said that he would leave her for a second and warned that he would use a sword. Ramil said that there was no need to worry, since she would finish him off herself with her fists. Then our heroine said, okay, let's move on, and asked why he was crying, if she understood everything correctly. Carlos replied that it was his personal situation, so he didn't want to talk about it. but the girl grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, not letting him leave, and said that he had to do something first. First, we need to clear up the misunderstanding with Mr. Roel, since there was a misunderstanding between them because of Tian. Suddenly, a young man appeared who said that it happened that he overheard a little. Marinum immediately began to tell him that there was nothing between them, and that there were no feelings on his part either, and the girl confirmed this. Arnon asked what kind of ring the gentleman had been holding in his hands on the terrace a little earlier. Didn't the young man want to give it to Lady Ramil? Our heroine flared up and said that it was enough to beat around the bush and let him tell the whole truth. The young man muttered that this ring was intended for another person, although he did not want to talk about it. Carlos went away during tea. He ran into a little girl. She introduced herself as Ramil's younger sister and said that her name was Ermia from the Viscounty Arnon, and asked what happened to him. The young man replied that he needed to tell someone something, but he couldn't find him. The little girl exclaimed that he should just say the name and she would definitely find the one he needed. After thinking for a while, Marinum gave her a small note and asked him to pass it on to such and such a person. The girl smiled sweetly and replied that she would go right now to do what he said because she knew her. The young man decided that when she came, he would no longer hide as long as possible. Sometime later, when Carol came to the meeting, he was so happy to see her that he immediately rushed to hug her. The girl started pushing him away from her and asking what he was doing in case someone saw him, after which she added that it was dangerous here, so it was better to go somewhere further away. When they sat down on a bench, the maid asked if they weren't supposed to see each other at the weekend. The guy replied that it was true, but he had a chance to see her today. Carol objected that he could get caught too if he continued in the same spirit. Carlos asked for forgiveness. While the girl was saying that she had actually run away, the guy put a ring on her finger. The assistant exclaimed that it was very unexpected, and the young man said that it suited her very well. After which he added that he was not asking her to marry him immediately or get engaged, but simply to accept him. The girl replied that if he later told her to take it off, she would not do it, so let him know that. So the reason why he visited their mansion so often was because he just wanted to see Carol. And the young man brought such a number of gifts so that he could give something to his beloved. Our heroine was angry to herself. Why did this girl hide such a thing from her? But everything was clearly kept secret for a reason. Then she asked if they were having a secret relationship because he wasn't sure he could get permission to marry. Whether he had already spoken with the Count, the young man immediately became gloomy and replied that no, he would tell him when he returned today. When asked if he would break up with her if she refused, Carlos replied that no, even if he had to leave home, he would definitely stay with Carol. Ramil exclaimed, "Is he a little child or something? Okay, you can imagine that he left home. What is he going to do next? How will he live? What will he eat?" When there was no answer, our heroine thought to herself, who could have known that this guy would turn out to be such an irresponsible person? If he does this, will the two lovers be happy in the end? She knows the circumstances of these two. The young man is the only child of the Count Carol. This is a fallen noblewoman who sold her title. The relationship between them will definitely be a problem in an aristocratic society. As a result, Ramil said that if such a situation only complicates the life of his beloved, then it would be better to break up. Let him think carefully that if he leaves home without any plan and nothing works out, is he then going to leave Carol and return home? It is better for the young man to break up with her while they are still on good terms. Our heroine thought to herself that playing the villain was easy, but it seemed to be enough, after which she said to stop crying and first develop a plan to convince his parents. Firstly, they don't know anything yet. Maybe they'll be able to get permission if they lie down on the floor and throw a tantrum. When Carlos objected that it was somehow not very good, the girl screamed that he needed to try absolutely everything. If he was afraid, then nothing would happen. The young man brushed away a tear and thanked her for understanding him. As Ramil had said, he would start by making a proper plan. Sometime later, the girl asked if everything was okay. She just remembered that serious expression on her face that she had recently made in front of him. Therefore, she was afraid that his mood might be spoiled because of her. But the guy objected that everything was fine. He shouldn't have interfered in this conversation. Then our heroine stated that he had misunderstood everything, deciding that Mr. Carlos liked her. Why didn't you ask her about this right away? The girl could have at least explained something to him or answered. Roel muttered that he himself did not know. But to himself, he thought that he was afraid to hear it personally from her. Ramil said that in any case she has something to tell him. She doesn't brag about it, but she has never dated anyone. So he has nothing to worry about, for sure. In the future, there will be no one who could love her, so there is no need to worry about such things. The young man looked at her and objected that someone would definitely appear who would love her. The girl is strong, and also incredibly caring and beautiful. He is sure that there is someone who admires her from afar. Our heroine did not understand what just happened. Was it really a confession? But the young man himself came to his senses and said that he didn't mean that. Ramil thought to herself that he was simply talking about her strengths, that's all. If another man had said these words, she would have considered it a confession. So she simply thanked him for his kind words. After a short period of time, they were already near the doors of his bedroom. The girl thought to herself that she should have pushed the stroller more slowly. So she thought, maybe it's worth asking him to talk a little more, while Arnon thought to himself, if he asked her to come into his room for a while, would she think about something else? Then each of them decided that their companion was clearly tired, and it would be better to meet tomorrow. So the girl said that Roel had been working hard preparing for the tea ceremony, so they would see each other the next day, and her husband did not argue. When morning came, the girl immediately went to his room and saw that the Viscount was already sitting there. The man said that he came because today was the day of the medical examination. Noticing some kind of ball in the young man's hands, Ramil asked what it was. Orm reported that this is an artifact that checks the state of the aura. Our heroine was delighted that this must be medical equipment of the new era. The knight said that it seemed that everything was over, so he returned the device to him. There was no reaction to the word. The girl noticed that he had hoped so much. That's why he now had an upset expression on his face. In the original work, when he lost his temper and plunged into darkness, his aura was restored. I wonder if there is another way, for example, find medicines that strengthen, select additional food products, walk with him every day and try to establish contact under the guise of physical training. The man asked him if he had had any problems sleeping lately. The guy replied no. The Viscount reported that, nevertheless, his health was improving. He looked nicer, compared to when they lived in the capital. Our heroine exclaimed that it was simply wonderful. Her husband replied that it was all thanks to her. When Ramil tried to say that she had done nothing, Orm shouted that improving the master's environment had had a huge impact, so she should be more confident. Also, thanks to the girl, the doctor had more opportunities to do various research. Remembering the question about whether he had had problems with sleep lately, the guy thought that it would be better for him not to talk about it now. Last night, as he went to bed, the young man thought that they had dealt with Carlos, so now he could rest easy. But suddenly, he felt a strange tingling in some parts of his body, as if some kind of beetle was crawling, after which the young man was seized by a wild pain in his chest, so much so that it was difficult to breathe. Roel recalled Orm's words that pain may arise in other parts of the body, if not in the legs. This is a common syndrome in people with paralyzed nerves and sensations. And this pain arose. In any case, it is necessary to call someone for help. But if the gentleman does this, then everyone will start to worry because of him, and he doesn't want that. Therefore, the young man just needs to hold on a little longer because it should get easier. This is probably just the body's reaction to the fatigue that has accumulated during the preparation for the tea ceremony. Watching them chatting sweetly among themselves, the young man was once again convinced that it was better to say nothing. Meanwhile, Sibiri took the little girl for a walk in the market square. The little girl said that it was very tasty, and that it was the first time she tried it. The guy replied that it was probably because this seasoning was made especially for their family. Then the young man saw that she had soiled her mouth, so he sat down and began to wipe it. The little one was indignant that she could do it herself. The young man noted to himself that now she looked much brighter than on the day he met her for the first time. More precisely, she was bright the first time too. She just didn't get the attention that others were giving her. Suddenly, Sibiri heard the sound of hooves, so he turned around and saw a carriage rushing towards them at great speed. The young man managed to grab the baby at the last moment and quickly jumped to the side. A little girl heard a faint cry for help coming from the carriage. When the guy started asking if she was okay, the little one exclaimed that they had problems. Ermia just heard a child's voice coming from that carriage, asking for help. The young man immediately rushed after her and shouted for the coachman to stop immediately before he pierced his neck. After the man stopped and expressed outrage at what was going on, Siberi said he needed to conduct a search. When he suddenly opened his cloak, he saw a small puppy sitting in a cage and trembling all over. The young man hissed at him to show him his animal trading license immediately. When there was no answer, the guy asked if there really wasn't one. On their land, animal trade was only allowed to people who had obtained a license. Doesn't he know the laws that were created because of those who hunt prisoners and animals? Then he ordered his knights to seize him immediately and added that they would learn all the details in the castle. While they were tying him up, the man shouted that it was the first time he had done this and that they should forgive him for the first time. The girl pointed her finger at the puppy and exclaimed that this little one was asking her for help. Siberi wondered to himself if this little wolf cub was really a prisoner. When they returned home, his parents asked him if he was crazy too. How could he bring a wolf into the castle? Was it really impossible to tell a puppy from a wolf cub? The young man muttered that the little girl had asked him about it very much. The baby replied that it was her fault. Ermia was too stubborn with him because she was very worried. Lyra and Seal immediately changed their rhetoric and said that, if you think about it, just one wolf cub in the house wouldn't hurt them. Rescuing lost wolves is also the job of lords. While our heroine was gloating that her little brother was being discredited, Siberi said that he brought him into the house because he thought he looked like a prisoner. The little girl heard him asking for help. The girl replied that no ordinary animal would talk to them, so the probability that he was a prisoner was very high. Then she looked at the animal and said that they also wanted to chat, whether he could turn into a human. When the wolf cub looked at the girl, she said that he had told her to bring him clothes first. After he finally turned into a boy, everyone present noted that the baby was the same age as Ermia. The young man said that he thought he would have ears or a tail. Our heroine immediately had an image of her husband in her head, who had ears on his head and a collar on his neck. Then she realized that she needed to calm down and not imagine such things, otherwise her nose would bleed, after which she said that he probably just felt uncomfortable, which is why he was deliberately hiding them. Then she turned to the baby and said that everyone here is very kind, so he can behave as he pleases. The boy immediately began to feel more or less calm, so he relaxed and showed his true appearance. The whole family was stunned by how cute he was, and they started asking what his name was and how old he was. For some reason, the little one didn't talk to them directly, but conveyed everything through the little girl. When Ermia said his name was Ruin, the guys said it was a very cute name. It seems like he fell into the hands of bad people, doesn't it? The boy immediately began to whisper in his ear what had been happening to him lately. The girl was completely horrified by what she heard and asked if this was really true. Then the girl said that he and his family were going to the Cloud Territory, but then they were attacked by monsters and they were separated. When the baby was left completely alone, he was immediately kidnapped. What should he do now? What if he doesn't find his family? Let him not worry, now Ruin is not alone. Our heroine said that first it is necessary to find the beastmen and hand the baby over to the family, but how to find them? The mother turned to the girl and said that it seemed that the child did not trust them, so she wanted to ask her to take care of him. But, only with her older brother's permission, Ermia immediately looked at Roel with a pleading look. Please, she really wants to help him find his family, just like her brother saved her in his time. The young man stroked her head and said that, okay, that's exactly what they would do. After some time, our heroine found her husband in the library and noted that she thought he would be there. When the girl opened her eyes and looked at him, she was simply dumbfounded and remained standing with her mouth open. The young man was wearing glasses and asked why she was looking for him. Ramil began to mumble incoherently that he put on glasses. Glasses for what? The guy explained that he wanted to study the beastmen, but it was hard to read because of the small print, so he had to put them on. When he started to take off his glasses, his wife screamed at him to stop so that he could sit in them just a little longer. She thought to herself that it was a treat for her eyes. Arnon in glasses is simply delightful. I wish I could take a photo now as a keepsake in honor of such an event, but there is nothing to take photos with in this world. Then she asked if Roel had difficulty getting used to their family. The young man replied that no, they were all very kind to him. Our heroine remembered the words of the maid, who said that before advancing the relationship, you first need to create the necessary atmosphere. How long is she going to wait with the first kiss? If there is no progress, then let her start with a light massage, just until they get used to each other's touches, and then let her kiss. That's why I started saying that he should think carefully. It's probably very difficult for him now. The guy was probably so tired, and Ramil was so stupid that she didn't even notice it. The young man tried to object that it wasn't so, but she didn't listen to him. And she continued to say that there was no need to worry and no need to lie either, since she understood everything, so she would help him relax. Then our heroine began to stretch her hands towards him and say that now he would enjoy her massage. Roel protested that everything was fine, but the girl told him to stop, since she was a masseuse approved by her mother. After which she abruptly lowered her hands onto his shoulders and began to massage him, asking him how he liked it. The young man liked it so much that he felt uncomfortable, so he replied that it really was amazing. He thought to himself that the girl's intentions were pure, but why did he feel awkward? Ramil thought that he was so calm. Did he really not feel anything because she was doing everything as the maid advised? Suddenly the guy turned to her and asked her to stop. It would be better to stop there, and in general he forgot that he needed to visit his sister. After which the young man began to quickly drive away in a carriage, and our heroine did not understand what had happened. Then she had a moment of complete disappointment. Because she had just been rejected, would she really be able to kiss him even in old age? Before going to bed, the guy thought that he should practice suppressing dirty thoughts. Suddenly, he began to feel the same pain as a few days ago. What is it? Because today he is not so tired. The young man understood that he could just fall out of bed, and suddenly Ramil would come in and see this. Suddenly, the young man realized that he was able to move his legs. The legs were clearly moving, so why can't I repeat this? Apparently, it's all in vain. The next morning, the girl walked down the corridor and thought that they should have breakfast together today. Our heroine's morning fantasies became unbridled. She told her husband that he had crumbs left near his mouth. But it's okay. He can use it as a vacuum cleaner so that people don't see it. A mosaic was imposed. The girl will show how Ramil differs from the one who was yesterday. Suddenly, she ran into the Viscount and asked if there had been an inspection today. The man was clearly hiding something and answered vaguely that the gentleman had simply called him for a minute on one matter and all that. Orm was accidentally hiding something from her. Her gaze made the man feel uneasy, so he said that he gave up and suggested going to the laboratory. After some time, the girl screamed how he could hide her husband's illness from her. He was her comrade, but disappointed her. The Viscount explained that he had asked the gentleman to tell her, but he had replied that it was difficult to look at something that only brought trouble. If his condition continues to deteriorate, then please let him hide it from them. Therefore, how could the doctor refuse him? She herself understands that this is impossible. Orm really wanted to tell her everything, but only when he made the medicine. The man, who is working on this very thing, having learned of Roel's condition, was going to finish it as soon as possible and tell Crowd everything. Our heroine noted to herself that the cauldron smelled so bad that it was simply fatal. When asked what effect it had, the Viscount replied that it would help restore the aura. Then she asked if such a medicine really existed. The man replied that yes, it is often used on the battlefield. This is the distinctive effect of the potion on the aura of the Northern Knights. However, this potion used by the Northerners has a side effect. The girl flared up. What other side effect? Jokes aside, let him tell her everything looking straight into her eyes. The Viscount panicked and said that the medicine he had prepared had no side effects. The man is sure of this because he excluded from the medicine the herbs that the Northerners use, replacing them with theirs. Since the ingredients have been replaced, everything should be fine, but the value of the medicine is 100 times more expensive. Our heroine told him not to worry about money and do everything right, after which she asked if Roel would be better after him. Orm replied that he doesn't think there will be immediate results, but there is a possibility that the treatment will only improve. In fact, he wanted to start preparing it when they were still in the capital, but the budget was limited and did not allow for such an opportunity. Although he came to the conclusion that there should be no side effects, the fact remains, so it would be good to test it. The girl asked sternly, meaning to test. The man immediately shouted that he knew he was being impudent. He tried it himself several times and there were no side effects, but he has no aura, only fatigue, as if by magic. Ramil realized that he needed the owner of the aura. The Viscount replied that, yes, they would probably know the result in a month. Our heroine immediately replied that she was in business, so let him give her the medicine. If a man drank it and everything was fine, then everything should be fine with her too. Orm immediately shouted that it was time to begin the experiment. He wanted to see the result of his labors as soon as possible. Crod noted to herself that it looked disgusting and was impossible to drink, which made her confidence sink, but she wasn't. When she muttered that it tasted like vomit, the man exclaimed that if the medicine was bitter, it was good quality. While the girl was whining that she was dying, Orm said that most likely after this, there would be no changes. Well, if something goes wrong, let her tell him. Ramil whispered that she needed candy to kill this bitterness. When he added that he was expecting her tomorrow for the second stage of testing, the girl asked that perhaps he should involve someone else in this experience. Meanwhile, Seal asked why she was looking at the sky. If something had happened, Lyra replied that it had just been clear, but suddenly lightning had struck. A week later, our heroine was pushing a trolley with a potion and snacks, and the maid said that there was more snack than medicine. The girl replied that her husband needed a lot of the mixture, so she took care of it. Carol asked if she had left any candy for others. Ramil replied that the young man was her family. That was more important to him now. The assistant exclaimed that her words sent shivers down her spine. Crod added that her father and mother probably took care of this in advance, because her father also loves desserts. In any case, the young man still comes first for her. Entering his bedroom, the girl said that it was time to take his medicine. This is something new that the Viscount has prepared. He learned about it thanks to the Northerners. It strengthens the aura and must be drunk once a day, so she believes in it. The young man looked at the potion and said that he would definitely drink it, but a little later. But our heroine objected that she had to be convinced of this, so let her drink it now, while she was here. Looking at his miserable appearance, Ramil noted that who would have thought that the cruel Roel would behave like a bun. Therefore, she asked if he knew how much a cup of medicine costs. This is the resident's expenses for a year, but if he does not drink, then all their work will be in vain. Does he want this? The young man asked for forgiveness, since he did not know this, after which he immediately drank it all in one gulp. Just like our heroine, he immediately began to have a gag reflex, after which she handed him a candy and told him to have a bite as quickly as possible. The young man involuntarily grabbed her hand and asked for forgiveness, since the taste was very bitter even after the candy. When asked how he was feeling now, the guy replied that it seemed like nothing special had happened. When the girl exhaled and said it was good, Roel asked if she had taken the medicine. Our heroine replied that the test was completed a week ago, but more people were needed for the testing. Therefore, their entire family was involved in the experiment on this medicine. Arnon muttered that they tried so hard and he didn't even know about it. Ramil asked for forgiveness for hiding it from him. She thought that if he found out about it, he would be against it. When the guy tried to answer something, she interrupted him and said that the experiment was for his own good, which is why she didn't tell him. He suddenly said that he was upset because the girl did not take care of herself and did everything for him. But the young man is very grateful to her and her family, so he will try to recover with all his might. Our heroine thought to herself that if it were Roel from the past, he would continue to bend his line about what burdens everyone. Maybe they became a little closer. Meanwhile, Hermia and Siberi watched the boy who stood near the window and prayed. The little girl sighed heavily and said that although he had promised to go to bed early, she still looked out the window. The guy explained that the little girl was simply very worried about her family. The girl came up to him and said that his family would be fine. She knew that the beastmen were very strong. The kid asked then why they still haven't found him. Maybe they just forgot about him. Even Hermia can't know the answer to this question. The girl exclaimed that the forest was simply very big. That's why they hadn't reached it yet, so she should go to bed. Suddenly, they would arrive at dawn. Now let him close his eyes tightly and believe her that everything will be okay. Then, the little girl took his hand and said that she wanted to pray for his parents to return as soon as possible. Please let him not take them away, as happened to hers. The young man thought to himself that, even though it was late, he should start looking for Ruin's parents himself. Sometime later, during tea, the Viscount asked how the guy was feeling today. Roel replied that, to be honest, after taking the medicine a few days ago, he felt pain that began to appear more often. The man asked if he meant that the old pain had returned. The young man objected that no, it would be weak but frequent, so there was no need to pay attention to it. Orm asked if this meant that the pain was decreasing. Arnon replied that it was, and very much so. The Viscount did not understand whether to pay attention to these frequent pains or to say that the situation had become even worse, not taking into account that the pains had weakened but had become more frequent. After which he stated that they had two options. First of all, it was necessary to reduce the amount of pain, and to do this they would reduce the dose of the medicine. The young man muttered that it turned out that it was still necessary to take the mixture. Orm replied that it was just his guess, but he thought he should reduce the portion. The knight replied that he would continue to accept it, as he did not think he was ready to give up right now. It may sound stupid, but he believes that more frequent pain will have its effect. When asked what prompted him to think this way, the guy replied that it was nothing special, just his intuition. Once, he almost lost when he followed the plan, but following his intuition, he won the fight. The man noted to himself that since this was the intuition of a war hero, it was better for him to remain silent and do as he wanted. Then he decided to ask how his relationship with Lady Ramil was going. Looking at his stunned expression, the doctor added that he didn't know all the details, it was just his interest. It seemed that they had become very close, but there were moments that were upsetting. Orm says all this just in case, since there is no guarantee that the favor of other people can last forever. What does favor, giving, or receiving something forever mean to him? Meanwhile, the maid was thinking about the need to write a reply letter to Carlos, but she was very tired. While the lady is busy with 18+ books, you can try to get some sleep. But in front of her door, she saw a young man and noted to herself that she was going to take advantage of the moment and take a little nap. And then she asked if he had arrived to the lady, whether she needed to be informed of his arrival, but unexpectedly the young man said that he had come to her. Carol started babbling. If the mistress finds out about this, she will simply destroy her, no matter how handsome he is. He shouldn't do this. She doesn't want to die without getting married, so there's no need for this. Rowell asked what she was talking about, secret meetings of lovers or something. The assistant realized that she had said something wrong, so she said she was joking and asked him to pretend that she had not said anything. The young man replied that he didn't really understand anything anyway, but in general, he came to ask something about Ramil. The young man would like to know what she likes because he wants to give her a gift. The girl exhaled that he came to talk about her and began to say that what our heroine likes is definitely sexual, but she stopped abruptly and did not finish the word. Then she began to panic inside, so she automatically began to talk about something like that. If she tells him what a perverted nature she has, then as soon as the mistress finds out about it, she will immediately bury her behind the mansion. But what does she really like? Crod is definitely good at wielding a sword, which means she loves weapons. She is indifferent to jewelry because whenever she asked her what she wanted to wear, the girl answered that she didn't care. But she will clearly like everything that the young man gives her, because it is not the content that is important, but who the gift is from. That's why she answered that the girl would be delighted with any gift that Rowell would give her. The main thing is not the content, but that it is given from the heart. Let him imagine that the lady is giving him a gift, so that he will then feel it. The young man immediately thanked her for the advice and said that it was worth thinking carefully about this issue. Before he had gone far, the maid called out that she thought a gift made with her own hands would carry more weight. What was sincerely done by himself, Arnon replied that he was not very good at that, but he would try. Rowell wanted to tell her what the gift would be, how she would now survive until next week. After some time, the young man noted that, as he thought, it was easier to work in silence. The girl handed him the key to her office and said that he could use it as much as he wanted. Thanks to Ramil, the knight now has a personal space where no one bothers him. Then he decided that it was already late, so no one would come, and he took out a handkerchief on which he embroidered the name of our heroine. The young man really hopes that this will make the girl at least a little happier. Meanwhile, Siberi was combing the forest with his assistants. One of them said that it was already the third day of searching, and there was still no progress. The guy replied that, be that as it may, in the village of Beastmen they would be able to find out something. Then the young man said that they had finally reached their destination. The young man muttered that he had met many of them, but this was the first time he had seen their settlement. Without thinking twice, Siberi simply jumped down to avoid looking for a way around. The boys shouted that no matter how urgent the matter was, how could he have abandoned them at all? How exactly were they supposed to get down now? The young man rolled his eyes and replied that he could do it on his own. How else? When he knocked on one of the doors, it was opened by a girl who asked what had happened. After she saw the man, she was taken aback that he had appeared in their village. The guy said that he was looking for someone, so he wanted to ask for help. Had she by any chance seen a gray werewolf recently? A local resident replied that she had seen 2 of them a couple of days ago, and that they had definitely come to their settlement. The young man asked what brought them here, if she knew where they were now. The girl replied that it seemed they said that they were looking for their son. The werewolves said that they had fought monsters, but then their child suddenly disappeared. Sibri noted to himself that Ruan had told exactly the same story. When asked if she knew where they were going, a local resident said that it seemed to be to the northwest. The guy muttered that this place was simply teeming with otherworldly creatures. The girl said that they tried to dissuade them from going there, but the guys insisted that their son had definitely fallen into the clutches of monsters, and the young man thanked her for her help. When he finished speaking, his knights arrived just in time, muttering breathlessly that they would simply die now. The gentleman reported that the investigation was completed. Now they have 2 options and let them choose. Either one will run for help while everyone else waits in the village, or they collect their thoughts and head northwest on their own. The guys thought to themselves that this place was simply teeming with monsters. Would they be able to cope, or did he want them dead? After which one of them asked what, in fact, was the reason for such a hurry. The boy replied that he felt sorry for the baby who had lost his parents. They were the inhabitants of their land, so they should help them. He's not exactly sure, but according to the boy, his family wanted to move and settle on their lands. Otherwise, there's no other reason to take such a risk by crossing the border, since only the Crod are kind to the beastmen. As far as they know, it is the Count's duty to protect the territories and its people. That's why he is in such a hurry. So which option will help them find the Ruin family faster? The boys muttered as if they had no other choice but to go to the mountains. Meanwhile, after the battle with the monsters, the woman told Rubel that everything would be fine. Their son was alive anyway. The man replied that he knew. The girl asked him why he felt sorry for himself if he knew. The young man replied that he was simply afraid for him. The wife hugged the young man and said that everything would be fine. There was no need to worry so much. Suddenly they heard some rustling behind them. It was footsteps and the smell of a person. The woman screamed, "Who is it? If it is a man, then let him show himself immediately." When a silhouette began to appear in the distance and the boys saw that he had a sword, they realized that it was a knight. The girl immediately took a defensive position and began to growl loudly. But it turned out to be Sibri who asked if they were by any chance Ruin's parents. The woman looked at him in bewilderment and asked, "Does he really know their child?" The young man said that his name was Sibri Crade. The boy has recently been under county protection. The boys were shocked that their child was in his estate and asked what he was doing there. When the boy replied that they had accidentally stumbled upon him and taken him in, Rubel burst into tears and began to thank him for his help, as they were very worried about their child. The young man asked if they were the only werewolves here. The girl replied that no, let him wait a little, and she would call her relatives. The baby's father explained that they were scattered around the area, but thanks to him, he shortened the search time. After some time, the long-awaited meeting of the parents with their child took place. The whole family watched this picture with great emotion and could not rejoice enough. Ramil jumped on her brother and said that he was just a handsome man. He tried so hard and reunited the family. The guy asked her to stop behaving like that in front of the guests. One baklava was enough. The girl exclaimed, "Who was this one so embarrassed because of a compliment from her sister? Here's another hot kiss." The young man yelled for her to take her lips away from his face. The father declared that on this occasion, he proposed to arrange a grand dinner. Now that the family is back together, it's time to celebrate, so it's time to move to the dining room. During the meal, the man asked if he could find out why they had decided to go to Crod. The girl replied that the situation in the kingdom of Mornin had become more complicated with the arrival of the new queen. She tried to drive out Princess Ryari and make her son crown prince. Therefore, the nobles from the faction of the deceased queen and the current one are at odds with each other. At that time, she showered them with money and gave them food in exchange for her legitimacy. But when problems arose in the economy, Her Highness stopped sponsoring them. The kingdom is now unbearable to live in. It is about to meet its end. Seal noted to himself that he had heard disagreements with the arrival of the new ruler Shin, but he didn't think that everything was so bad. Lyra intervened in the conversation and asked what they planned to do next in Krod. The husband and wife answered in one voice that their pack would like to become county soldiers, as they know that werewolves are excellent defenders of their territories. If they are provided with food, the boys will not give the enemy a chance to set foot on their lands. They are extremely loyal, and they have no home. The man replied that the offer did not seem so bad. The woman supported him and said that after the meal they would find them a place on the border. After this, Rubel turned to his son and said that they would soon be leaving the castle, so let him say goodbye to everyone in advance. The girl took his hand and exclaimed that she was very glad that he had finally found his family. The baby turned to her and asked if Ermia would go with him to the border. Our heroine thought to herself, wow, what a romantic drama is blossoming right before our eyes. When the little one replied that she couldn't go anywhere because her home was here, Ruan said that he would stay then too. His mother asked him not to act like a little boy. Ramil thought to herself that she had completely forgotten that he was the same age as Ermia. When she was little, she also did not want to leave Carol's house. Suddenly, the young man turned to her and asked if there was any way to leave them. He did not think separation would be good for the children. Our heroine thought to herself that this was a great chance to score points, after which she raised her hand and addressed her father as "Dear Count." The man was frightened by this kind of address and asked her to speak normally. When our heroine asked if there was any reason at all for them to leave the castle, the werewolf muttered that usually no one wants to live with beastmen. The woman said that there was no need to worry. Their subjects were not like that. They all lived in harmony with the beastmen. Rubel said that of course he heard that the Krod family treats them well, but not to that extent. After which they were asked, since they wanted to become the Count's soldiers, how about defending the castle? Let him try living here for a month first, because they still won't find a better solution so as not to upset the children. When the werewolves answered that they agreed, Ramil muttered that they had made the right decision, but to herself she thought that the problem was solved. Would Ermia like it? Then she looked at the kids, who were very happy and were discussing among themselves how great everything had turned out, and she was convinced that everything was fine. A little later, Lyra asked her husband if he was going to go to bed at all. The man replied that later, as he was a little busy. The woman decided to get up and see for herself what Seal had been sitting and looking at the map for so long. Perhaps he wanted to expand his territory. The Count said that there was a small piece of land between the kingdom of Mornon and Krod. For some reason, he suddenly wanted to take possession of it. The wolf said that the soldiers on the border stopped receiving their salaries. If there is chaos inside, then there is chaos outside too, which means these lands can be easily acquired. Lyra asked if he was going to go into battle right now. Her husband replied that of course not. The woman looked at him sternly and asked if he was lying. Seal exclaimed that no, first he needed to restore his son-in-law's health. The wife replied that that was it, so he should finish it and go rest. Meanwhile, Lady Ryari was informed that Her Majesty the Queen was waiting for the girl in the garden, so she should hurry. When the princess asked for help combing her hair, the maid slammed the door and left. On the way, the girl thought that no one in this estate listens to her or obeys her. After Piari entered the greenhouse, the queen immediately hissed that she was late, but let her meet the princess of the Empire, Antonia. The girl greeted her, but did not understand at all why she was there. Behind her stood only one knight who was dressed rather simply. It turns out that she secretly visits Arnon, but why? The queen ordered her to go to the table and sit on the sofa next to her. After which she said that she probably doesn't know why she was called here. The woman wants Ryari to go somewhere. Antonia immediately intervened in the conversation and asked if she knew Count Krod. At this time in the county, the Viscount happily announced that he had created a new aura meter. Ramil asked how it differed from the old one. The man explained that the old one could only measure aura above 100%, but this baby measures values below. Our heroine thought to herself that if this time he didn't count even a drop of Roll's aura, then her sweet bun would be very upset. Orm said that the principle of its operation is exactly the same, so let him just relax and hold it in his hand. Krod understood that not only she was really looking forward to the result, but the young man too, so she was very worried. Suddenly the man said that it was enough. Unfortunately, there was no good news yet. Our heroine was indignant. Why is he judging by just one measurement? We need to try again. While they were talking to each other, the ball in the young man's hand began to glow brightly. The man was delighted that his device had worked after all, and now it was time to sum it up. Mr. Roll does have an aura, which means that rehabilitation is possible, and his recovery, in fact, is also possible, but this does not mean that he can get up and walk right now. Unfortunately, first, it is necessary to go through several stages of treatment. It is best to combine rehabilitation with exercises, so he will quickly feel that the body is returning to normal. Pain may appear. The young man noted to himself that what he had experienced several times already meant that his body was getting better. The Viscount reported that at the moment they had 3 possible scenarios. The first is a complete restoration of the aura and the ability to move on their feet, the most ideal option for them. The second is to restore the aura by only 50%, in which case he will still be able to walk, but he will need something like a cane. The third is the minimum aura recovery rate. Arnon will be able to move his legs but not walk. The guy began to think that maybe he would be able to restore his nerve endings, and he would be able to walk independently. Our heroine took him by the hand and said that no matter what the outcome, she would still stay by his side, so he shouldn't worry. Roel thought to himself that even a few of his words gave him confidence. He wanted to thank her for believing in him more than he did. If only his legs would get better as soon as possible, he would be able to welcome the warm spring together with Ramil. After which he thanked her and said that, strangely enough, he felt better, and all thanks to her words. The girl thought to herself that if the Viscount had not been there, she would have already kissed him. In the original, Roel was able to fully recover, so she hoped that there should be no problems. After some time, the young man finished making a gift for our heroine. Then I noticed that it turned out a little crooked, so it was annoying. After which, I decided to redo my handicraft so that everything would turn out perfect. But a little later. Suddenly his legs began to hurt again, but thanks to the girl's words, it was a little easier for him, and he decided to hold on for her sake. Then he remembered about the painkiller, but it was standing on the table at some distance from him. At the same time, the maid tried to persuade Ramil to give her the book, but the girl objected that the most interesting part had only just begun. Carol said that her patience was not infinite. Did she really want her to tell Roel that Ramil was reading indecent books about young ladies? The girl exclaimed that if it would help them, then let her tell right now. Suddenly, our heroine began to feel very anxious and realized that something had happened to her sweet bun. When she declared that she would go to him at once, the assistant muttered that the erotic books had robbed her of the last grain of fear. As she quickly ran away, the maid thought to herself that she would finally be able to read that very moment. After Ramil knocked on the door and called him, there was no reaction. She could not understand what was going on. Maybe he was already asleep. But as soon as she heard him scream, she immediately opened the door and asked what was wrong with him, if his legs hurt. Roel exclaimed that everything was fine. He just needed a painkiller. He shouldn't worry and go to sleep. Our heroine replied that she knew that he had been suffering from pain ever since that day of tea drinking. Arnon is obviously deliberately hiding this from her and Viscount Orm, isn't he? Ramil understands his feelings and that he doesn't want her to worry. But as she said earlier, they are a couple, so there should be no secrets between them. If he hides something from her again, Crod will be very angry. The young man replied that he understood everything and would no longer hide anything from her. Suddenly the young man said that he wanted to give her something. Would she accept it from him? It was the first time the young man had done this, so it didn't turn out so, but he would like to give her this gift. Roel received something from her every now and then, but never gave anything in return. Since he cannot go outside freely, this is the only thing he can give her. Let him forgive her for not being such a good gift. The girl thought to herself that the fabric was so soft and the color was so beautiful. It even had her name embroidered on it. How could a surprise be bad? When the young man added that he had also done the embroidery himself, Ramil burst into tears, saying that it was the best surprise, and the guy tried to calm her down. When she wiped her snot with her sleeve, the young man told her to use a handkerchief, but how could she use it? Because it was made by her beloved, the most precious gift in the whole wide world. As soon as Ramil wakes up tomorrow, she will immediately start building a showroom for the gifts from Arnon. However, due to the cruel refusal of Liera and Seal, her grand plan became just a dream. Time flew by very quickly, but fortunately Roel's rehabilitation was bearing fruit. The young man had already managed to cross the bridge in 32 seconds. The girl said that he walked much faster than last week. The guy objected that it was only by 6 seconds. Our heroine noted to herself that his hands were shaking, which meant he was overtired, and he looked tired. Then she began to wipe the sweat from his face and think about the drops sliding down his pale neck and such a strange, seductive atmosphere. Perhaps this is the perfect moment for the first kiss, sent by God. Unexpectedly, the young man himself took her hand and began to reach for her lips. But the moment was ruined as the gate suddenly swung open and the guy happily announced that they were back. When they saw the guys in a strange pose, they wondered what was going on. The girl hissed that she actually warned him that he needed to wait until they finished training. To correct the awkward situation, our heroine exclaimed that she was glad to see them and asked how they were doing. At the sight of Roel, Fidel burst into tears and muttered that he had never thought that his condition would improve so much. Ramil thought to herself, I wonder if she looked the same when she cried or differently. After which she asked, where are Garen and Garen anyway? She ordered them to return. Have they really lost all fear? The young man reported that the two had gone north. They said that a war would soon begin there, and there was an opportunity to make a profit. The girl muttered that, of course, war was not scary to them. The guy replied that the guys said that there was nothing scarier than Lady Ramil. Sometime later, the man told the Viscount that he had not expected Sir Roel to recover so quickly. He is not an expert in medicine, but he knows that damaged nerves are very difficult to restore. Didn't Orm say when he returned to the capital that the treatment would not be easy at all? The doctor replied that this is indeed the case. The most important factor in recovery is the patient's will. At first, he still had enthusiasm and optimism, but gradually his hopes began to fade. When he came one day to measure his aura, Roel turned into an empty vessel, and from some point on, he stopped talking about the future altogether. The young man believed that he was a burden, he had a lot of debt, and marriage was only a dream. No woman would be happy with him. The man asked if he meant to say that it was all a matter of desire. The doctor replied that desire alone was not enough. In truth, there is one theory he is pondering. The young man just needs to laugh more. Orm believes that a person's aura is filled with positive emotions. Sometime later, the little girl was telling us that she had been studying Imperial political dynamics with the Count this week, and our heroine thought to herself that she was definitely a genius for taking such difficult lessons. The little one added that she was even praised and treated to sweets that were prepared according to the chef's personal recipe. When Ramil asked if the lessons were too difficult, Ermia exclaimed that not at all. She wanted to learn everything as quickly as possible, and besides, she was being taken very well care of. The guy stroked her head and said that she was a great girl, but he thought to himself that when they lived in the capital, he was very inattentive. The girl could have learned everything long ago. They were very lucky to get into the Crod family. The sister noticed that Roel was keeping his eyes on Ramil and said that they had a lot of questions, so she and the boy would go and let them eat together. After which, she grabbed the baby by the hand and began to pull him out of the room, telling him to move. The knight noted that they had a great passion for learning. The girl was reborn, which did not seem like Ruin had it either. The young man stood up and said that in that case, it was worth listening to Ermia and going to eat. On the way, our heroine said that everything seemed so strange. Arnon clarified what exactly. The girl replied that when they first met, he turned her down. Who would have thought that everything would turn out like this? The young man immediately said that he was very sorry, but Ramil objected that there was no need to apologize. If he had immediately agreed, she would have felt awkward. The main thing is that everything ended well, because that's the most important thing. The young man replied that he sometimes wondered what would have happened if he had never accepted the offer. Crod thought to herself that if this had not happened, the family that Roel cared for, as well as himself, would have disappeared from the pages of this world. As in the original story, Arnon would have lost his mansion and would have been left on the streets. The boy wandered the streets in search of the Viscount, who suddenly disappeared. He finally found him, but the man was dead, and after that, the young man found himself at the very bottom. Then, after about 6 months, winter will come, in which his little sister will remain forever. But she said out loud that even if he had not met her, everything would have been fine. The young man replied that he believed that he would not be as happy as he was at the moment, after which Roel came to his senses and said that it was time to finally go and eat. On the way, the guys discussed that they would then continue their rehabilitation. Meanwhile, the Viscount grabbed his head and said that the research had reached a dead end. The assistant did not understand what the problem was because Arnon had already started walking. Orm explained that in order to be completely cured, it is necessary to use the magic stone correctly. The guy asked if he really thought they were useful in medicine, since in fact they were dangerous for people. Doesn't the doctor know that they are only good for creating artifacts? The Viscount reported that he had found records of the purification of magical stones. The man muttered that if one thought logically, the purified ones should be safe for people. Only a first-class magician can obviously do this, but where can one be found? Orm replied that he had met such people, but they all insisted that they were not able to make such things. These notes were left behind by a famous physician of the Kingdom of Mornon. He can be trusted, which means it is possible, but he cleaned the stone with an unknown force. The problem is that he did not say which one. And the man himself has no idea how to cleanse the stone, which even magic could not master. When a talented person takes it in his hands, the stone will shine. Purified from black, it will turn into white, and only in special cases will it become transparent. The assistant muttered, "It's amazing, what an unusual description." Meanwhile, the boy picked up the stone that had fallen on the floor and returned it to them, and the Viscount thanked him for this. But suddenly he noticed that this was a magical stone of proper purification. It was simply incredible. Orm shouted that he would give him as many magic stones as he wanted. Just let him show how he did it. It's okay if it doesn't work out, just let him relax and try to do the same thing as last time. The boy simply took it in his hands, concentrated, and the magic stone began to shine. The doctor said that he never thought that this object could actually be like this. It really did turn white. The assistant praised him and said that finally a holiday had come on their street. The man, however, became hysterical due to nerves and joy, so he simply laughed out loud. The young man looked into their office and said that it was already dinner time, and they were still busy with something there. But a strange picture appeared before his eyes. The children were huddled together in fear, the doctor was screaming like a madman, and the assistant was asking him to control himself. Suddenly the man calmed down and ominously whispered that he could finally continue his research. The guy didn't understand what was happening, why he was smiling like that. Were all scientists so crazy, or was the research too complicated? When the children saw him, they immediately rushed to hug him, sobbing. Roel asked what was going on here. The assistant was just about to start explaining, but didn't have time. Suddenly, the voice of the Viscount was heard, exclaiming that his patient had arrived, and he had been waiting for him. Thanks to the werewolf child, they now have a way to cure him. Namely, everything should work out with this magic stone, which is purified by the forces of Ruan. This child is their hope. The young man was so taken aback by what he heard that he did not even know what to say. A few days later, when everyone was gathered, our heroine thought to herself that she had not expected her mother to come, because she thought that after that examination, she would not show her nose here. Orm began to tell that he first met with the boy's parents. Purification is either a unique ability of beastmen or is not connected with it in any way. But it turned out that none of them knew about the power of purification. In fact, no one had ever done it. Ramil thought to herself that if every pack had the ability to cleanse magic stones, then the rumor would have spread long ago. There was not a word about purification anywhere, and there was not a single line in the original work either. Roel asked what to do next. The man said that he had called them here to tell them something. This medicine is made from the previous potion and a magic stone. It is able to restore the destroyed core of the heart. Ramil asked about side effects. The doctor answered that there are none as such, but problems may arise at the beginning of the treatment. The medicine made from magic stones is much more powerful. Its elements will clash with the remnants of Arnon's aura, so it can be very painful. Crod noted to herself that his face was glowing. Was he really that happy that the aura could be restored? But still, she should prepare for anything. Therefore, I asked her to please tell me everything about the possible side effects. Orm said that she compared the supposed symptoms with the ones she currently has. Firstly, some part of the body may become paralyzed. Since he will have to constantly spend stamina and aura, he will often want to eat and drink. Purely hypothetically, while walking his legs may suddenly give out, and there is also a small risk of cramps in his sleep. Our heroine thought to herself, how can this be called a cure? If everything continues like this, then he will not be able to walk for the rest of his life. The woman said that after taking the medicine, they would have to deal with its side effects. It seems that it would be better for her to look after her husband herself, so it is necessary to divide the room between the two. It dawned on Ramil that she was hinting at a life together. Could she really hold his hand all night? The long-awaited moment had finally arrived. But suddenly the guy objected that maybe it was worth just stopping at regular visits. Lyra said that if something happened to his body, help would not always come at that very second, whether he thought about it or not. The young man muttered that it seemed to him that all this would be useless. Our heroine looked at him and told him to be honest. He just didn't want to share a room with her, did he? The young man exclaimed that that wasn't what he meant. He is simply very ashamed to show his weak sides, Ramil. The girl was touched by this, and she asked if he had forgotten what Crod had told him last time. They can show each other their weak sides because they are a couple, and there should be no secrets between them. After thinking for a while, the young man asked her in that case to take care of him from now on. After some time, that very moment came. The doctor said that since he was drinking the medicine for the first time, half a bottle would be enough. The girl asked if it was okay that they hadn't done any testing. Orm replied that this drug was for restoring the core. If they tested it on people with an intact core, they wouldn't get any results. Our heroine noted to herself that she was very worried, although she understood that Roll was even more worried. The young man thought to himself how much it would hurt this time, but then decided that now was not the time to whine. This was all for Ramil. The young man then immediately began to take the medicine and noted to himself that it tasted like just ordinary water. But literally a moment later, he was struck by terrible pain. Our heroine immediately began to ask if everything was okay. The doctor said that he understood that he was in a lot of pain now, but he had to let him know how he felt. The young man replied that his legs felt like they had turned to stone and were very painful. When asked if anything else hurt, the guy replied that the same thing was happening with his hands. The girl immediately took his hand and began to mentally ask that it at least not hurt so much. She felt bad because she could only stand and watch. The young man looked at her and said that thanks to her he could endure this pain, so she would not look at him with such eyes. After these words, the guy simply fell down and lost consciousness, and Ramil asked him to come to his senses. The man said that, as he thought, the time had come. Our heroine asked what he was even talking about. He needed to be saved. Orm exclaimed that he had completely forgotten to warn him. He thought it was hard to bear the sharp pains while remaining conscious, so he mixed the medicine with a sleeping pill. He wanted the guy to fall asleep right away, but if he overdid it with the dose, the sleeping pill would greatly dilute the ingredients of the drug, after which he muttered, "Is she really crying?" Crod exclaimed that she thought he had died of pain. The Viscount asked her for forgiveness and told her to leave the care to him and let her rest. The girl objected that everything was fine. When she got tired, she would rest. It would be better if the professor went and rested. If he overloaded himself, then who would make the medicine for her husband? He was busy making it all night, so he could barely keep his eyes open. If he refused, then she would knock him out herself. The man replied that he understood everything. Then he would take a little rest. If anything, he would be in the laboratory. Let him call if anything happened. Taking a look at the young man, our heroine could not understand when he had managed to sweat so much. It is urgently necessary to wipe his face with something. It will not be a big deal if he looks into his drawer. There she saw a large number of unfinished handkerchiefs on which he had tried to embroider her name. The next morning, when Roll came to, he saw Ramil next to him and asked if she hadn't slept all night. The girl replied that she had taken a short nap and asked how he felt, how his legs were. The young man replied that everything was fine. He felt much better than yesterday. As for the core, she can't say anything for sure yet, Crod thought. Maybe half a bottle wasn't enough. After which she said that it was unrealistic to recover at once. If she constantly takes the medicine, she will quickly recover. She needs to leave for a short time on business and will return around lunchtime. Watching her go, the guy thought that he hoped she hadn't overdone it. After our heroine came to her room, she immediately fell onto the bed and told the maid that she would take a little nap and that she should wake her up for dinner. When Carol asked if she had really decided to go to bed in the middle of the day again, Ramil replied that she had actually not closed her eyes all night and had been monitoring Arnon's condition. The assistant asked if he would think it was weird since they were now sharing a room. Crawd replied that he was worried that she hadn't slept, so she had to lie and convince him otherwise. The maid asked why she didn't just tell the truth. She always hides everything. The girl objected that it was immediately obvious that Carol doesn't think about her feelings. Then she asked if she remembered the play. The white flower growing in the temple, which Ramil had recently gone to. The assistant answered that, of course, since she had gone to the production without her. The girl continued that at that time she thought that she would be able to care for a sick person, like the main character, but now she understands that reality is completely different. It is quite difficult to watch a young man endure pain while hiding it from his wife. Now it would be better to rest, although perhaps he felt uncomfortable in her presence. I wish it would all be over when she wakes up. Ramil really hopes that it will be. 3 weeks have passed since then, and there has been no effect. At this rate, he may stop walking altogether. His condition is worse than it was. The girl's brother came up to her and told her not to wander around the mansion, but to go to her room, since at such moments it was pitiful to look at her. Our heroine got furious and screamed that he was annoying her and that he shouldn't touch her at all, after which she tried to hit her. When she finally succeeded, the young man exclaimed that it actually hurt him. Why was she waving her fists? Ramil asked him for forgiveness. When leaving, the guy thought that she was sick, and Crawd thought to herself that she was feeling really bad, so she was taking it out on everyone. The young man's first sad memory was in childhood. The man asked where the boy was from. The knight explained that he lost his parents during the evacuation of residents. The interlocutor said that he could not be left alone, so they would take him with them. He will stay with them until his parents show up. Food is not free, so let him give him a job. Over time, he began to be taught how to use a sword. The man was told to concentrate, and every time during a strike, his posture should remain straight. Then he added that when the war was over, they would head to the capital. Would he like to go with them? Talent like his is something that needs to be looked for, so he shouldn't worry he won't be abandoned. After one of the battles, the young man shouted the name of the commander and tried to find him, but he did not answer. After some time, the guys were discussing that they say that all the mercenaries were killed in this war. They were lucky to survive because they stayed in the rear, but the Flash Knights were ambushed and killed. Roel experienced despair twice when left alone, so he decided to become a volunteer. He was told that training would begin tomorrow, that he should not be late, and that if he suffered, they would not abandon him. Arnon thought to himself that he would study diligently and would definitely avenge his commander. Initially, there was a desire to avenge parents and mercenaries, but gradually it lost all meaning. The young man has already destroyed countless numbers of enemies. One day they brought a baby to him and told him that she was the only survivor. What to do? Starting with Heria, who found herself in a similar situation as he began to have more and more dear people, and life began to flow in full swing. Thus, the young man had a reason to live and fight, protecting his loved ones. But suddenly everything collapsed when the boy lost the ability to walk. They expressed great gratitude to him for his work, but said that Roel could no longer be the commander of the knights now. So he decided to return home and thought that maybe God simply hated him and really wanted to drive him to despair. Arnon prayed and admitted that he was a sinner. Since his hands were covered in blood up to the elbows, it was okay if he couldn't hold a sword, but let him wake up from this nightmare. In order for the guy to be able to protect the people close to him, he begs to be given a ray of hope. Then Roel came to his senses and realized that it was all a dream. Seeing a girl next to him, he thought that she was having such a hard time because of him. When the young man decided that he needed to put her in bed, he realized that he could walk. It dawned on the young man that the experiment had been successful, and now the aura was with him again. Ramil, who woke up, asked if this was reality or if she was still sleeping. Examining himself, the guy replied that he also wanted to know whether this was a dream or reality. Our heroine immediately pinched her cheek and screamed in pain, saying that this was definitely not a dream. So her husband is getting better after all. The guy replied that yes, he really doesn't know if he's completely cured. The girl was very happy, rushed to hug him and congratulate him on this, but to herself she thought how long she had waited for this day. Roel thanked her and said that it was all his wife's merit, but she objected that there was no need to thank her because it was everyone's merit. The young man added that he would have to undergo a full examination, but it seemed that his arms and legs were fine. Our heroine exclaimed that she would then quickly run for the Viscount. Suddenly, the boys simultaneously thought that if things were going well, then it meant that they would return to their rooms again. After the survey, the man realized that he was doing much better than he thought, after which he said that there seemed to be nothing special, so he thought that the inspection was enough for today. The girl asked what she should do if her husband felt much better. Should she return to her room or what? The doctor replied that this was only the first day of recovery, so he could not be left alone yet. Our heroine asked whether she needed to remain a nanny for now. Orm replied that yes, as long as they were together, there was nothing to be afraid of, and he personally hoped that she would continue to do so in the future. Our heroine turned to Roll and said that since the doctor said so, there was nothing to be done. The girl understands that he is uncomfortable, but health should still come first. I thought to myself that this was just great. Ramil deserved it, thanks to her hard work day after day. Meanwhile, her father was asking what exactly was happening in the kingdom of Mornon. The interlocutor replied that now is the time to create peace because the queen wants it. Narvia had put down a great rebellion and brought their country to peace, so he came to tell of it. This woman, from an unknown kingdom, overthrew the princess who opposed her and came to power despite opposition and resistance. Therefore, it is very doubtful that she really froze and then asked what they wanted. The man coughed and replied that they would like to send a delegation to them. If the count allows, it will be headed by Princess Piara. Seal thought to himself, although she is powerless against the new stepmother, she is the legitimate heir to the throne apparently. Under the pretext of the delegation, they just want to get rid of her. What exactly are they planning? There seems to be someone there who has some serious brains. The situation is getting dangerous. Meanwhile, Garen and Garen watched the mercenaries who were dragging the coffins. The guy asked his brother how many precious stones Ramil would give them for this information. The friend replied that what other precious stones does he really think that she will accept them with open arms and start listening? Although, the Black Hoods are conducting a strange experiment on corpses. They don't have many magic stones, however. One of the HUD Corps leaders is currently being held captive, so more information is needed. Then they decided that it was necessary to report this to the lady urgently, but they forgot which way to go. On the way, the princess wondered whether she would be able to look good at all as a representative of Mornon. The queen declared that if Piara performed well as an ambassador of peace to the Crawd family, she would recognize her. The girl thought that it was not worth it at all. She would just like a stable and calm life. Suddenly, the carriage stopped abruptly, and Her Highness did not understand what was happening. The knight said that they were planning to have a snack before crossing the border. Could she please wait a little? When the princess replied that it was okay, the guy said that he would bring her food right away. Piara thought that she was a little excited to leave this hellish place. Maybe she should take a walk and look around before lunch. The girl did not understand why there was no one around. Perhaps they decided to start with hunting and then cook what they caught. It's strange, but they are the same people who don't like hunting, and suddenly I found them by chance. The boys discussed that they were going to kill her. First, they would add a sleeping pill to her dish, and while she was sleeping, they should make sure that she died properly. It dawned on the princess why she had been sent as a representative to the county of Crawd. Piara, like a fool, was happy that she left that place, but they won't let her go so easily. What should she do now? The only person who can help her is her uncle, but even if they escape, they are already far from the west. Will she really have to die here now? One of the youths said that all the risks must be taken into account. Another objected, wasn't the plan to kill the princess as soon as they crossed the border? The interlocutor replied that he should change. He heard that the Crawd family sent knights to the border to meet Piara. They would have to deal with her a little earlier. The girl realized that if she crossed the border, she would be able to survive. She really didn't want to die. After some time, they started running around looking for her and shouting that it was already lunchtime and that she should come out right now. Where did this girl disappear to? She's hiding now like a rat. When they went the other way, the girl thought to herself that she was very weak. If she had known that this would happen, she would have taken fencing lessons. After which she realized that if she crossed this river, she would quickly enter the territory of the county of Crawd. There was no time to think, as the cries of the knights were heard, shouting that she needed to be captured and not allowed to escape. The princess grabbed the stone in her hands and ordered them not to come near her. The boys laughed loudly and asked what she was going to do with him anyway. after which one of them poked her in the throat with a sword and asked what. Was she really threatening them like a little child? The princess wondered if she would really die and asked to tell her the reason why the queen wanted to kill her. The young man asked her if she would understand if he said that her death would cause war. If Piara dies, it will be a reason for them to start a war with Crod. Suddenly, the hand with which the young man held the sword was pierced by an arrow. It turned out to be Siberi Crod, who arrived just in time and caught this picture. While the boy was wondering what was going on, the princess immediately rushed to him and began to beg him to help her. The detachment commander shouted that they were standing rooted to the spot and that they should attack him immediately. The young man threw a cloak over the girl and told her to stand aside, after which he turned to the knights and stated that they were from the kingdom of Mornon. How can they call themselves that, not observing the knightly code and having no sense of duty? After a short period of time, Piara wondered how he managed to cope with so many people. Crod came up recently, which means he is from a family of knights and is simply incredible. Siberi thought to himself that he tried not to touch the vital organs, but apparently there was poison in them. Could it all have been planned in advance? When the young man asked if everything was all right, the princess exclaimed that it was, and began to thank him for saving her. After she said her name, the guy realized that the girl was Princess Mornon. Then he said that he wanted to clarify, just in case, whether these knights had been rude and ignorant towards her. Piara replied that, yes, the royal guards wanted to kill her. The young man picked her up in his arms and said that, as a gentleman, he could not allow the princess to walk barefoot. He will try to go slowly, but let her still hold on tight. The girl wondered whether she should go to their mansion, because most likely it would cause a war, and she could not allow the man who saved her to suffer. Therefore reported that the attempt to kill her was to foment war between Mornon and Crod. If she dies in the count's mansion, his family will be blamed for it, which will become an excuse for inciting hostilities, so she cannot go to them. After which she thought that after these words he would probably abandon her in the forest, but she did everything right. But suddenly the young man said that he had assumed that their plan was such, because killing one's princess could not be done just like that. Piara exclaimed, "If he knew that the girl was the cause of the war, then why didn't he leave her?" The guy replied, "If she dies, will that solve the problem?" The princess muttered that she could simply hide somewhere in the empire. Siberi replied that it was ridiculous and nothing more. If she hid, did she really think that the kingdom would remain silent about the fact that a princess had disappeared on the border? Their family would have been caught in the crossfire anyway. Piara said that perhaps she should go back then. The guy replied that he could clearly see a killer waiting for her at the border. Let him come to terms with the fact that he cannot return to the kingdom. The enemy's plan succeeded from the moment the princess left the palace. I thought to myself that the situation is now very difficult. The girl cannot hide or go back. No matter which option is chosen, the outcome will be the same: death. So he said that the reason he is taking her to the mansion is not because of pity or hopelessness. It is simply more profitable for them for the princess to remain alive than for her to die. Piara thought that she didn't know what benefit she would bring them, but if she could help them in any way, she would do so. When they arrived at the tent city, the guy immediately said that he needed help. This is the princess of the Mornon kingdom. Due to some circumstances, she is injured, so let Kiara take her to the barracks and help her. The girl asked what was required of her. The young man said to just take care of her, feed her, and let her have a good rest. The princess wanted to return his cloak to him, but Siberi objected that it was quite chilly at night, so let him keep it. Let Piara not think about what happened today, but just go and rest. Meanwhile, Roel did not understand why he still had a feeling of thirst. It disappeared only when Ramil was nearby. Just holding hands wasn't enough. He liked watching her sleep. The young man was very afraid of losing his happiness, as he had done before. Mother said that she agreed with his letter. The welcoming meeting was cancelled. What happened? The princess intervened in the conversation and asked to be allowed to explain everything. Our heroine watched all this from the second floor and did not understand who she was. When Piara explained exactly how the queen planned to start the war, Seal muttered that the plan was quite crazy. Liera said that she understood the whole situation, so let her rest, and then they will consider this issue. Ramil stated that Mornon were suicides, and that there was nothing like that in the original work. The princess does not look like a villain and is very sad. She resembles a prisoner who has escaped from prison. The young man looked exactly the same before he came to their family. It is very risky to leave her alone. It is impossible to come to her and offer friendship directly, so we need to think of something else. And in general, only role was worthy of this. After which it dawned on our heroine that children were the best strategy. The next day, the maid came to see her and said that she had done everything as the lady had asked. When the little ones came to her and asked to read a book, their cuteness struck her. Ramil noted that no matter how depressed you are, these guys will cheer you up in a split second. Carol added that the princess doesn't seem like a villain. She's quite kind, sweet, and humble, unlike some. But nevertheless, the girl kept looking at the floor and behaved rather timidly. Our heroine said that she heard that there was a political struggle in her kingdom. Apparently, Piara was to blame for it. It is difficult to get rid of depressive thoughts, but it is easier to make others think differently. Since she was so tired that she couldn't eat and her head was a complete mess, then training was the best remedy. The maid objected that it was very rude of her to make the princess sweat, but the girl objected that fencing was a method of self-defense, which is why she wanted to offer her to take up training. After some time, Siberi said that they had not seen her for a long time. The girl agreed. After this, there was an awkward silence. The guy did not know where to start the conversation, and the princess thought about what brought him to her. Then he asked how she was doing in the count's mansion. The girl replied that everyone was very friendly to her. The food was very tasty, and there were beautiful views all around, and the children were absolutely cute. The kids constantly entertained her and tried to feed her, so they are the charm of this mansion. When she asked why the young man had come, he asked her if she had ever taken fencing lessons, and how about learning it for self-defense. Let the princess think carefully, because the training will not be easy. The girl replied that everything was fine and that she was asking him to teach her fencing. While the boy was wondering what was going on, the princess immediately rushed to him and began to beg him to help her. The detachment commander shouted that they were standing rooted to the spot and that they should attack him immediately. The young man threw a cloak over the girl and told her to stand aside, after which he turned to the knights and stated that they were from the kingdom of Mornon. How can they call themselves that? Not observing the knightly code and having no sense of duty. After a short period of time, Piara wondered how he managed to cope with so many people. Crod came up recently, which means he is from a family of knights and is simply incredible. Siberi thought to himself that he tried not to touch the vital organs, but apparently there was poison in them. Could it all have been planned in advance? When the young man asked if everything was all right, the princess exclaimed that it was, and began to thank him for saving her. After she said her name, the guy realized that the girl was Princess Mornon. Then he said that he wanted to clarify, just in case, whether these knights had been rude and ignorant towards her. Piara replied that, yes, the royal guards wanted to kill her. The young man picked her up in his arms and said that, as a gentleman, he could not allow the princess to walk barefoot. He will try to go slowly, but let her still hold on tight. The girl wondered whether she should go to their mansion, because most likely it would cause a war, and she could not allow the man who saved her to suffer. Therefore reported that the attempt to kill her was to foment war between Mornon and Crod. If she dies in the count's mansion, his family will be blamed for it, which will become an excuse for inciting hostilities, so she cannot go to them. After which she thought that after these words he would probably abandon her in the forest, but she did everything right. But suddenly the young man said that he had assumed that their plan was such, because killing one's princess could not be done just like that. Piara exclaimed, "If he knew that the girl was the cause of the war, then why didn't he leave her?" The guy replied, "If she dies, will that solve the problem?" The princess muttered that she could simply hide somewhere in the empire. Siberi replied that it was ridiculous and nothing more. If she hid, did she really think that the kingdom would remain silent about the fact that a princess had disappeared on the border? Their family would have been caught in the crossfire anyway. Piara said that perhaps she should go back then. The guy replied that he could clearly see a killer waiting for her at the border. Let him come to terms with the fact that he cannot return to the kingdom. The enemy's plan succeeded from the moment the princess left the palace. I thought to myself that the situation is now very difficult. The girl cannot hide or go back. No matter which option is chosen, the outcome will be the same: death. So he said that the reason he is taking her to the mansion is not because of pity or hopelessness. It is simply more profitable for the princess to remain alive than for her to die. Piara thought that she didn't know what benefit she would bring them, but if she could help them in any way, she would do so. When they arrived at the tent city, the guy immediately said that he needed help. This is the princess of the Mornin Kingdom. Due to some circumstances, she is injured, so let Kiara take her to the barracks and help her. The girl asked what was required of her. The young man said to just take care of her, feed her, and let her have a good rest. The princess wanted to return his cloak to him, but Siberi objected that it was quite chilly at night, so let him keep it. Let Piara not think about what happened today, but just go and rest. Meanwhile, Roel did not understand why he still had a feeling of thirst. It disappeared only when Ramil was nearby. Just holding hands wasn't enough. He liked watching her sleep. The young man was very afraid of losing his happiness, as he had done before. Mother said that she agreed with his letter. The welcoming meeting was cancelled. What happened? The princess intervened in the conversation and asked to be allowed to explain everything. Our heroine watched all this from the second floor and did not understand who she was. When Piara explained exactly how the queen planned to start the war, Seal muttered that the plan was quite crazy. Liera said that she understood the whole situation, so let her rest, and then they will consider this issue. Ramil stated that Mornin were suicides, and that there was nothing like that in the original work. The princess does not look like a villain and is very sad. She resembles a prisoner who has escaped from prison. The young man looked exactly the same before he came to their family. It is very risky to leave her alone. It is impossible to come to her and offer friendship directly, so we need to think of something else. And in general, only Roel was worthy of this. After which it dawned on our heroine that children were the best strategy. The next day, the maid came to see her and said that she had done everything as the lady had asked. When the little ones came to her and asked to read a book, their cuteness struck her. Ramil noted that no matter how depressed you are, these guys will cheer you up in a split second. Carol added that the princess doesn't seem like a villain. She's quite kind, sweet, and humble, unlike some. But nevertheless, the girl kept looking at the floor and behaved rather timidly. Our heroine said that she heard that there was a political struggle in her kingdom. Apparently, Piara was to blame for it. It is difficult to get rid of depressive thoughts, but it is easier to make others think differently. Since she was so tired that she couldn't eat and her head was a complete mess, then training was the best remedy. The maid objected that it was very rude of her to make the princess sweat, but the girl objected that fencing was a method of self-defense, which is why she wanted to offer her to take up training. After some time, Siberi said that they had not seen her for a long time. The girl agreed. After this, there was an awkward silence. The guy did not know where to start the conversation, and the princess thought about what brought him to her. Then he asked how she was doing in the count's mansion. The girl replied that everyone was very friendly to her. The food was very tasty, and there were beautiful views all around, and the children were absolutely cute. The kids constantly entertained her and tried to feed her, so they are the charm of this mansion. When she asked why the young man had come, he asked her if she had ever taken fencing lessons, and how about learning it for self-defense. Let the princess think carefully, because the training will not be easy. The girl replied that everything was fine and that she was asking him to teach her fencing.